Chapter 2685. Chief Steward, let's talk. Palace Keeper Zhao smiled faintly. Palace Keeper Zhao was obviously quite happy because of the royal blood gem. I used to be the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord and have a maid in the Northern Darkstar Territory called Zhao. She's quite capable of managing resources. I was separated from her since the Life and Death Tower and Divine Demon Sect put a bounty on my head. She's probably still fleeing everywhere within the Northern Darkstar Territory. Can I ask Palace Keeper Zhao to send someone to pick her up and send her here to help me? Jianghu explained. This is simple. Just tell me where she is and he'll immediately send someone to pick her up. It won't take long, said Palace Keeper Zhao. The Northern Darkstar Territory was a little far away from the Danyang continent as it took Jianghu nearly 40 years to arrive at the Danyang continent. The reason was that Jianghu did not use the spatial passage to travel between the stellar regions. Palace Keeper Zhao naturally would not mind using the spatial passages, hence he could quickly travel back and forth between the Danyang continent and the Northern Darkstar Territory. There's a second matter, said Jianghu again. I need some military formations or some type of special formations that can be used by a few people altogether. Military formations? Special formations? Palace Keeper Zhao frowned slightly. What do you want these things for? Are you trying to form an official army? Just let me handle this. Jianghu smiled mysteriously. Palace Keeper Zhao shrugged and said, the strongest military formation in Crimson Stone Fort is in the hands of the Crimson Stone official army and will never be passed on to anyone. Even if the fort master personally asks for it, she may not be able to get it from the Blood Thunder King. However, ordinary military formations and magic formations such as those military formations used by various stellar regions' official army in Danyang Holy Domain, I can help you get them. I can also get some of those lower-level magic formations as well. Those ordinary military formations and low-level magic formations are more than enough. Jianghu smiled. The official army he was setting up was not ready yet, therefore some ordinary military and magic formations were good enough. Wait here for a while, said Palace Keeper Zhao before he turned and left. Palace Keeper Zhao reappeared in front of Jianghu after nearly half a day and handed an interspatial ring to Jianghu at the same time. Here are 10 billion primordial stones and the military formations you asked for. I've already ordered someone to bring your maid here. She'll be here in the Danyang continent in less than 10 days and he'll send a message to tell you when that happens, said Palace Keeper Zhao. Thanks a lot. Jianghu thanked him and left after taking the interspatial ring. He did not return to the Sword Alliance but stayed in the Sacred Palace to wait quietly. 8 days later, Zhao came to Jianghu under the personal guidance of 2 heaven ultimate gods. Master. Zhao looked extremely excited to see Jianghu again. Shiner, it's been a long time since I last saw you. Jianghu smiled faintly and also noticed the divine power of Zhao. Zhao was still the same as before, just a primary level ultimate god. Zhao Tiexin's strength had not improved at all after so many years. Jianghu could only secretly sigh. Zhao could be regarded as a genius, but she had used some taboo secret techniques which greatly damaged her foundation and limited her strength. It was becoming way too difficult for her to make a breakthrough after reaching the very top of the primary level ultimate god realm. Zhao looked at Jianghu again after a simple greeting. Master, how far are you now in your cultivation realm? I think the 2 masters who came to pick me up before seem to be very powerful. Of course they are powerful. They're both heaven ultimate gods after all. Jianghu smiled. Heaven ultimate gods? Zhao was shocked. Heaven ultimate gods. In an ordinary stellar region, an earth ultimate god could become the territorial lord and be a respectable ruler. Heaven ultimate gods were simply out of her league to Zhao. However, her master could get 2 heaven ultimate gods to pick her up in person. How high was her master's cultivation realm? Shiner, come with me first. We'll talk as we go. Jianghu led Zhao directly toward the Sword Alliance. Jianghu began to explain many things to Zhao along the way. Zhao was shocked when she found out that Jianghu had already created a powerful alliance with dozens of heaven ultimate gods and was flattered when she knew Jianghu's purpose in bringing her back. It turns out Master brought me here to help him manage his large alliance. Zhao held her hands together in excitement. It did not take long before they returned to the Sword Alliance. Jianghu immediately summoned Dong Shui, Yen, Longshan, and Zi Wang as soon as he arrived at Sword Alliance. Let me introduce my maid to you, this is Shiner. All the resources and income from various Sword Alliance's belongings, including the many resources I have on hand, will be handed over to her from today onward. You can look for her if you need any primordial stones or resources in the future. She'll be the chief steward of the Sword Alliance. Jian Wushuang glanced around at the four people. The four people looked at each other and nodded their heads. They kept stealing glances at Xiao Tiexin a few times in puzzlement. All of them could see that Xiao Tiexin was just an ordinary ultimate god, a primary-level ultimate god. She was extremely weak, such that anyone from the Sword Alliance was much stronger than her. Why would a person like her be appointed as the chief steward of the Sword Alliance? It seems that the Alliance Master has a lot of trust in her, muttered the four people secretly in their hearts. It was indeed impossible for Xiao Tiexin to control all the resources within the Sword Alliance if Jian Wushuang had no absolute trust in her. The most important matter for a force was wealth and resources. As long as the wealth and resources were sufficient, there would be a steady stream of powerful experts joining the force. That was the true lifeline of a force, and generally, the person in charge was the one who controlled both wealth and resources. Even though Shiner is not powerful, she has the full authority to represent me. Her orders will be mine from now on. You'll be killed without mercy if you dare to violate her authority as the chief steward. Do you understand? Jian Wushuang said coldly. Yes. Dong Shui and the others nodded their heads and very humbly paid obeisance to Shiner at the same time. Okay, all of you may go now. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and the four immediately left. Jian Wushuang looked at Xiao Tiexin after they left. He smiled and asked, Shiner, how do you feel? Somewhat excited. Xiao Tiexin sighed. Master, were those four people just now also heaven ultimate gods? Yes. However, they are your subordinates starting from today. You can order them at any time. Jian Wushuang smiled. Chapter 2686, Divine Sword Official Army, those heavenly ultimate gods are my subordinates? Xiao Tiexin was a little dazed. Of course. Although your strength is too weak, these people will obey your orders now because of me. However, it will be difficult for you to control them one day if I leave the Danyang Holy Domain, so you've to seize the opportunity and do your best now that I have given you such high authority. You have to cultivate your power as much as possible, alright? Jian Wushuang advised Xiao Tiexin. He was going to leave the Danyang Holy Domain sooner or later, and the Sword Alliance would be left to the care of those he trusted. Xiao Tiexin was the best candidate, but her cultivation realm was too weak, so she must find a way to cultivate her strength. I see. Xiao Tiexin nodded slightly. She was the eldest young miss of a clan and had gone through a lot, so she would know what to do. This interspatial ring is for you. Jian Wushuang handed an interspatial ring to Xiao Tiexin. After Xiao Tiexin took it, she was shocked after she browsed through its content. Primordial stones. There are so many primordial stones. How many are there altogether? Xiao Tiexin was horrified. Not much, maybe around 2 billion? Jian Wushuang smiled. 2 billion. Xiao Tiexin gaped. She became a little emotional and was unable to calm down for quite some time. 2 billion primordial stones isn't much to form an official army in the Sword Alliance. To do so will cost a lot of primordial stones. Long Shan will ask you for primordial stones. You can give it to him as long as his request is for the official army. He'll give these 2 billion to you first. Come and look for me if it's not enough, said Jian Wushuang. Understood. Xiao Tiexin nodded firmly. You are too weak. Go see Dong Shui and get her to find 2 powerful and reliable guards to be your followers. Go on then. Jian Wushuang waved his hand. Xiao Tiexin immediately left. In the palace, Jian Wushuang sat on the throne and tapped his fingers on the armrest. The current Sword Alliance has just formed and the official army has just been established. I'd better just stay put before the Divine Sword Official Army combat prowess becomes powerful. Jian Wushuang faintly smiled and soon went into seclusion. He wanted to take the opportunity of his seclusion to absorb those divine elixir pills. Earlier, he managed to get nearly 1,800 divine elixir pills from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion disciples and 500 divine elixir pills after slaying the Purple Beast Alliance Master. He had nearly 2,300 divine elixir pills at hand. The pure divine power from those divine elixir pills was too much even with his refining speed. It would take a long time for him to absorb and refine all of them. It took a year and 3 months before those nearly 2,300 divine elixir pills were finally completely absorbed and refined by Jian Wushuang. Just as he expected, he still failed to break through to Heaven Ultimate God Realm after refining all those 2,300 divine elixir pills, but was not too far from it. Jian Wushuang estimated he would need at most 2,000 more divine elixir pills to make a breakthrough to the primary level Heaven Ultimate God realm. Once he became the Heaven Ultimate God, he would once again usher in a qualitative change to his strength. There would not only be a huge increase in the level of divine power, but the key was the many secret techniques he cultivated would also greatly improve. In the void above Dragon City, Jian Wushuang, Xiao Tiexin, and Long Shan were walking alongside each other with two extremely powerful primary-level Heaven Ultimate Gods behind him. Those two primary-level Heaven Ultimate Gods were chosen by Xiao Tiexin to protect her. It did not take long for the group of people to arrive over a huge camp. Alliance Master, this is the Divine Sword Official Army Barracks. I'll gather all the soldiers, said Long Shan before heading toward the camp. Shiner, how many primordial stones did Long Shan take from you? Jian Wushuang asked. I've given him 1.5 billion. 3/4 of the 2 billion primordial stones you gave me have been given to him, replied Xiao Tiexin. It took more than a year to spend 1.5 billion primordial stones. This divine sword official army should have begun to take shape, commented Jian Wushuang. The many soldiers of the divine sword official army soon gathered together and were divided into 5 rows, standing in lines. Jian Wushuang stood high in the sky and looked down. There were a total of 50 soldiers, each wearing black armor with special secret patterns. That black armor was a heavenly treasure-level defensive armor with an amazingly high value. Each of them was worth about 15 million primordial stones, 50 pieces. The defensive armor alone cost nearly 800 million primordial stones. Those soldiers were exuding an amazing divine power breath, with every single one of them being a Heaven Ultimate God. They were the elites among the Heaven Ultimate Gods. 50 soldiers stood there carrying a very strong breath of combat power. Jian Wushuang and Xiao Tiexin immediately went down and appeared in front of Long Shan. Alliance Master, you told me that it's enough to form a 30-member official army in a short period, but we now have 50 members thanks to the rich resources provided by Miss Shiner. All these 50 very capable people are Heaven Ultimate Gods elites. In addition, they have mastered most of the military formations you gave them. There are 5 members in a small team. Each team comprises a high-level Heaven Ultimate God and 4 primary-level Heaven Ultimate Gods. They have great combat power when paired with the military formations, said Long Shan. Not bad. Jian Wushuang nodded approvingly. His first impression of the Divine Sword Official Army was good. Jian Wushuang suddenly got startled as he noticed 3 people seemed to look the same among the 10 soldiers standing in the front row. Even their divine power breaths were also the same, as all 3 of them were high-level Heaven Ultimate Gods. Who are those 3? Jian Wushuang pointed at those 3 people. Those are the 3 brothers of the Zhao family. The 3 of them are triplets. Long Shan smiled and then he shouted, Zhao Tianshan, Zhao Tianhe, and Zhao Tianhai, step out. Each of the 3 Zhao brothers was extremely beefy and tall, like 3 small hills. They immediately stepped forward after hearing Long Shan's comment. At the same time, the 3 brothers were also looking at Jian Wushuang. Brother, who's that person? Zhao Tianhai asked. I haven't seen him before, but Long Shan has a very high status in the Sword Alliance. The only person who will be treated with such respect must be the Sword Alliance Master, said Zhao Tianshan. Sword Alliance Master? How is he only a high-level Ultimate God realm? Isn't he in the same realm as us? Zhao Tianhe muttered. It's kind of interesting that the triplets not only look the same and so are their cultivation realm. Jian Wushuang smiled. He had also met a pair of twin brothers when he was walking in the Dark Thunder territory of the Northern Darkstar territory. The twin brothers had excellent tacit understanding and even created a set of fusion attack techniques. Their strength was quite extraordinary. Those high-level Heaven Ultimate God triplets looked rather extraordinary. Chapter 2687. The 3 Zhao brothers, the 3 of you hurry up and meet the Alliance Master, shouted Long Shan in a low voice. The 3 Zhao brothers hesitated. Zhao Tianhai, the youngest of the 3 brothers, strangely said, Commander Long Shan, is he really the Alliance Master? How come he's just a high-level Heaven Ultimate God like us? He doesn't look very powerful. Jian Wushuang was startled when he heard that. How presumptuous! Long Shan yelled and was just about to scold them. It doesn't matter. Jian Wushuang waved his hand before slowly stepped forward, looked at the 3 brothers and faintly smiled. What do you think is necessary to become an Alliance Master? The Sword Alliance controls 2 cities and is considered extremely strong among the 3rd-rated forces in the Danyang continent. Now that they even have the Divine Sword Official Army, the Alliance Master has to be at least a peak Heaven Ultimate God, said Zhao Tianhai. Peak Heaven Ultimate God? Jian Wushuang smiled speechlessly. Sometimes a person's cultivation realm can't represent everything. Why don't we have a battle since you feel that I'm not powerful enough to become the Alliance Master? The three of you can join forces and fight against me and see who wins. How about that? A battle? Zhao Tianhai was surprised. Alliance Master, are you sure? The eldest brother, Zhao Tianshan, looked over quizzically. We three brothers have a good tacit understanding and work extremely well together. Each of our combat powers is already extremely strong among the high-level Heaven Ultimate Gods. We can fight with a peak Heaven Ultimate God when the three of us work together. Really? I'm looking forward to it even more then. Let's do it. Jian Wushuang beckoned at the three brothers. The three brothers looked at each other and knew what each other was going to do next without even talking. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Those three hill-like figures moved all of a sudden. Their divine power breath increased and had a terrifying sense, just like three living beasts. The three of them appeared in front of Jian Wushuang in the blink of an eye and attacked at the same time with their sabers flung out. Bam, bam, bam. Three bright saber lights fell almost at the same time, with each slashing toward Jian Wushuang from three different directions. The three of them positioned their attacks from three very tricky directions. It effectively blocked Jian Wushuang's figure, leaving him with no possibility of evading. The cooperation between these three is impeccable. Jian Wushuang nodded secretly. He immediately drew out his Blood Mountain sword and mustered his divine power. Clang, clang, clang. There were three repeated low-impact sounds of collision before the three brothers were sent retreating backward. That's so powerful. Although he's only a high-level Heaven Ultimate God, his divine power breath is probably very close to a peak Heaven Ultimate God. Brothers. The youngest brother, Zhao Tianhai, glanced at his two older brothers. A magnificent gush of divine power emerged from the three of them before instantly condensing together. Rumbling. An extremely violent black mystical ape with a height of 100 feet appeared out of thin air under the trio's joint efforts. The black mystical ape exuded an earth-shattering aura breath. It tilted its head back and roared as soon as it appeared. The roar came with a terrifying sonic attack which gave many Heaven Ultimate Gods a scare. The black mystical ape suddenly charged forward. The three brothers indeed are also capable of executing fusion attack techniques, and their strength isn't bad. The black mystical ape they formed together doesn't seem weaker than an average peak Heaven Ultimate God, whispered Jian Wushuang before lunging forward and was already in front of the black mystical ape. A huge sword shadow formed out of thin air upon a sudden wave of his Blood Mountain sword in his hand. The black mystical ape was tumbling around with its mystical energy as it growled. It then fiercely flexed its sturdy arm and huge as a star fist that carrying an earth-shattering power before slamming right down at Jian Wushuang. Bang! There was a loud noise from the collision of the towering sword shadow with the mystical ape's fist. The light quickly died down along with the sword shadow's collapse. This mighty power is even stronger than an ordinary peak Heaven Ultimate God? Jian Wushuang was a little surprised as his figure instantly retreated. A part of that terrifying power acted on Jian Wushuang's divine body, but it could not do much to him. Alliance Master, is this all you've got? A magnificent voice came from the black mystical ape. Inside the black mystical ape, the eyes of the three Zhao brothers shone with intense excitement. The three brothers had been together since they were born and had improved their strengths together. They had also created a fusion attack technique which allowed their combat power when working together to become far greater than their individual strength. The three of them seemed to be just high-level Heaven Ultimate Gods at first glance, but when the three formed that black mystical ape, even a peak Ultimate God had to retreat. He am being underestimated. Jian Wushuang laughed instead of being angry upon hearing the black mystical ape and made a move again. The majestic golden divine power gathered madly behind him while he was moving and condensed into a 5,000-foot-high golden god shadow in the blink of an eye. His phantom was much taller and stronger than the three Zhao brothers' black mystical ape. Jian Wushuang raised the Blood Mountain sword with both hands and sent out the sword again. He still did not use any sword techniques. It was just a slash of pure power, but when the longsword was sent out, it contained endless space-time strength with two space-time blades integrated into that sword strike. A horrible sword light emerged suddenly as the longsword fell. The sword light was more powerful than the one Jian Wushuang performed previously. The most important matter was the two space-time blades contained in the sword light. That was the real horror. Oh! The void frantically screamed under the sword light's pressure. The three Zhao brothers and the black mystical ape seemed to have sensed the sword light's power and dared not be careless. They immediately used their full strength, causing the black mystical ape to roar again, and swung out its two sturdy arms. However, the result was, the sword-light slashed with its horrible strangling power and instantly smashed the black mystical ape's arms. What? The three Zhao brothers were surprised and immediately retreated. Haha, don't run so quickly. Jian Wushuang laughed. The long sword in his hand was placed horizontally and slashed again. The sword driven by the Blood Mountain Sword's power smashed the black mystical ape again and again. Jian Wushuang's divine power was close to a peak heaven ultimate god. The power of his sword every attack had greatly leveled up when paired with the divine god of punishment secret technique and the two spacetime blades that he had been enlightened from the spacetime law. Chapter 2688, 7 Absolute City Boom. 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 Jian Wushuang treated the Blood Mountain Sword in his hand like a stick and struck the black mystical ape again and again. His terrifying power erupted completely and the black mystical ape obviously was unable to resist. It kept retreating and stumbling backward. The divine power breath in the mystical ape was also fading crazily. Alliance Master, we surrender. We surrender. Alliance Master, please be merciful. The voices of the three Zhao brothers resounded from inside the mystical ape. Jian Wushuang disregarded their pleas and carried on with the attack. He suppressed the black mystical ape until it completely collapsed and disintegrated before finally stopping. Now, do you think him qualified to be the Sword Alliance Master? Jian Wushuang smiled and looked at the three Zhao brothers. However, his smile made the three Zhao brothers shudder with eyes full of horror when they looked at Jian Wushuang. How can this be? He's obviously only a high-level heaven ultimate god, but why is his power so strong? We three brothers are the best at power. The black mystical ape formed by our fusion attack technique is also based on power. Even an ordinary peak ultimate god would retreat when facing our black mystical ape, but the Alliance Master had completely relied on his power to crush us. Awesome. Alliance Master is simply amazing. The three brothers secretly admired. The three of them were simple and honest. They only honored the strong as their leader. They were a little unconvinced when they saw that Jian Wushuang, the Sword Alliance Master, was just a high-level heaven ultimate god like them. However, they were convinced after the battle where Jian Wushuang crushed them with his power. The fact that Jian Wushuang crushed their best-performing technique had gained their recognition. Alliance Master, how do you feel? Long Shan and Xiao Tiexin walked over to Jian Wushuang. The three Zhao brothers are not bad. The three of them can compete against an ordinary peak heaven ultimate god. As for the other soldiers, I've not fought with them so I can't see where their level of strength is. Let's do this. They can come and train with me together tonight, said Jian Wushuang. Yes. Long Shan nodded. At night, the bright moon hung high in the sky. Jian Wushuang set off with Long Shan and the 50 soldiers of the Divine Sword official army. A large group of figures was skimming along on the void. Alliance Master, where are we going? Long Shan, who was by Jian Wushuang's side, asked quizzically. Don't ask first. You'll know very soon. Jian Wushuang smiled. Long Shan dared not ask further. Their group traveled all night and finally appeared before a big city in the morning the next day. That's the 7 Absolute City? Long Shan was shocked when he saw the city before him. 7 Absolute City belongs to the 7 Absolute Palace. Alliance Master, do you want to attack the 7 Absolute Palace? Why can't I? Jian Wushuang smiled. He had planned it a long time ago. There were 5 major forces in the Sword Alliance, all of which were only third-rated forces, with the Corpse Palace being the strongest. The Sword Alliance was formed not long ago, and while the Divine Sword official army was being created, he had been holding back on making a move. However, he no longer needed to hide his plan and began to expand after the Divine Sword official army development. The 7 Absolute Palace was one of those third-rated forces, and Jian Wushuang was determined to take it down in one blow. Alliance Master, the 7 Absolute Palace is a third-rated force after all. Not only is its strength not weak, but is also complicated. Should we put this down on a long-term plan? Long Shan asked worriedly. It was not a trifling matter to attack a third-rated force. Under normal circumstances, Jian Wushuang should have gathered many high-level experts in the Sword Alliance to carefully discuss it, and best to make full preparations before doing it. However, there was obviously no preparation on that other day when Jian Wushuang brought the Divine Sword official army there to immediately attack them. Why the trouble to only take down a third-rated force? Let's go directly into 7 Absolute City and behead all the high-level 7 Absolute Palace experts and then suppress them by force. Those who dare disobey us shall be killed without mercy. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold with a solemn expression. Long Shan tried to gulp down some saliva to stay calm but did not dare to persuade Jian Wushuang anymore. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Whoosh, whoosh. In just a few moments, many Divine Sword official armed soldiers broke into 7 Absolute City under Jian Shuang's leadership. Naturally, the high-level 7 Absolute Palace experts immediately noticed the large group of experts that suddenly broke in. The figures of their experts rose into the air. Some restrictions and formations from 7 Absolute City have also been activated. In the center of those experts stood a black-robed old man with an extremely cold and evil aura. He appeared in front of Jian Shuang while being surrounded by many experts. The black-robed old man was a peak heaven ultimate god, obviously the 7 Absolute Palace Master. Who are you? The 7 Absolute Palace Master looked cold as he turned toward Jian Shuang. Sword Alliance, Su Han, answered Jian Shuang. The 7 Absolute Palace Master's face sank. People from the Sword Alliance? We never had any frictions and struggles between our two forces since the Sword Alliance's establishment. What's going on here? Jian Shuang smiled indifferently. I'm here for a very simple purpose, your 7 Absolute Palace's location being right next to my Sword Alliance. I've been eyeing this 7 Absolute City for a long time, so you can choose between you surrendering to the Sword Alliance or perish. Your choice. Presumptuous. The 7 Absolute Palace Master was furious. The many 7 Absolute Palace experts were gawking at Jian Shuang angrily. They were both a third-rated force, yet the Sword Alliance Master brought a large number of experts to their city and demanded them to directly surrender? How could they be willing? Su Han, I've heard that your Sword Alliance has integrated the previous Dragon Divine Gang and Purple Beast Alliance. Besides, you've also recruited members on a large scale this year. Your strength is already extremely strong, but you shouldn't be too arrogant. Do you want to take my 7 Absolute Palace down with just a few of you here? I'm afraid you won't be successful, said the 7 Absolute Palace Master coldly. Does this mean that you want surrender? Then there's nothing more to say. Jian Shuang's gaze was cold for a moment. Endless golden divine power emerged from Jian Shuang's body, which then turned into a majestic golden divine power ocean and frantically swept in all directions from Jian Shuang. In the blink of an eye, the golden ocean of divine power covered a vast area of heaven and earth and immediately formed a huge golden prison out of thin air after the golden divine power ocean was formed. The golden prison covered most of the void above 7 Absolute City along with the powerful 7 Absolute Palace experts. The coverage was to the extent that many other 7 Absolute Palace experts and Divine Sword official army soldiers were also enveloped within it. Chapter 2689. Battling the 7 Absolute Palace Master. The 5,000-foot-high golden god Shadow appeared once again behind Jian Shuang and looked down upon all things in heaven and earth, intimidating them. Jian Shuang was like an emperor in the golden prison. Powerful domain oppression was acting on those 7 Absolute Palace experts. The experts could feel that their strength was limited to a certain extent. What's this? A prison? And one with domain powers? The domain is so powerful. The 7 Absolute Palace experts frowned as all of them could feel the golden prison's sturdy and solid strength around them. They were all trapped within the prison. Divine Sword official army kill. Jian Shuang pointed toward the 7 Absolute Palace experts in front of him and commanded. Murderous intent instantly rose in those 50 Divine Sword official army soldiers. Long Shan roared and said, "Everybody, Alliance Master has spent such a high price and time to create us the Divine Sword official army, and today is our first battle. Let's show the Alliance Master our combat powers. Listen to my orders. People, go in groups of 5 and kill." The attack command resounded. The cold killing intent diffused as the 50 Divine Sword official army soldiers immediately went into groups of 5 and off they went charging at the many 7 Absolute Palace experts. Shocking shouts of killing echoed in the void which shook heaven and earth. Kill? The many 7 Absolute Palace experts also immediately came forth to greet the attack, and both sides were in a heated battle. The war had broken out. Su Han. The 7 Absolute Palace Masters' cold eyes stared hard and hostilely at Jian Shuang as an endless evil aura permeated the area. Jian Shuang smiled coldly at him before soon made his move. Jian Shuang appeared in front of the 7 Absolute Palace Master in a jiffy as though he teleported before coldly thrusting the Blood Mountain sword in his hand. The gloomy 7 Absolute Palace Master had a purple spear in his hand. Although Sword Alliance Master Su Han is only a high-level heaven ultimate god, he was capable of killing the former Purple Beast Alliance Master and should not be underestimated or taken lightly. A majestic divine power surged as the 7 Absolute Palace Master had fully displayed his own strength. The purple spear in his hand made a sharp forward stab, producing endless power of destruction. The power of destruction formed a huge vortex of destruction in the void, like a wild beast opening its big wide mouth fiercely at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, who was supported by the sword intent from his long sword that carried the powers of two spacetime blades, wanted to strangle and break everything in front of him. The two instantly collided. Bang! A low sound like two heavy objects collided was heard as two shots of terrifying powers exploded before colliding head-on in the void. At the same time as the powers' collision, Jian Wushuang's perfect sword world of 100,000 miles hit the principal world displayed by the 7 Absolute Palace Master and caused the principal world to be oppressed and almost disintegrated in just a brief moment. How is his sword world so strong? 7 Absolute Palace Master was astonished. His principal world was completely crushed as he was affected by a great shock, instantly weakening his overall strength. He was perplexed because he had learned the destruction law, which had one of the strongest offensive powers among the laws. His spear technique was also extremely good, not to mention that his own divine power was even more tyrannical. Even if he was under the double oppression of Jian Wushuang's sword world and golden prison domain, he was certain it would not affect his offensive powers. However, he ended up recalling himself with a slight advantage after colliding against Jian Wushuang's sword world. Rumbling. The divine power spread in heaven and earth as both of them finally pulled apart, with Jian Wushuang sent staggering back a short distance. Indeed, anyone who learns the destruction law has fierce offensive powers. Jian Wushuang was admiring the power of the destruction law. Soon after, Jian Wushuang stood firm and raised his hand. Bus, 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 bus. 9 infernal crimson divine swords appeared in front of him. Each of those 9 infernal crimson divine swords was filled with transmigration strength. Jian Wushuang thought it was a hassle to use the 9 infernal crimson divine swords individually for attacking, so he had fused all 9 into one. Transmigration Sword Formation's first formation, Heaven's Edge. Boom. A huge black divine sword burst out from the reincarnation passage like a huge awl as it pierced through the void and shot toward the 7 Absolute Palace Master. The Transmigration Sword Formation. Although it was only the first formation, it was performed in its best possible condition. Jian Wushuang had spent more than 40 years in his journey from northern Darkstar territory on his transmigration law perception, which had already reached the first stage's extreme. In addition, his divine power was also comparable to a peak heaven ultimate god at that instance. The black divine sword had shocking power when its full potential was being displayed. The 7 Absolute Palace Master's pupils shrank sharply when he saw the black divine sword coming through the void. He immediately sent the spear in his hand out. Clang. The sound of metallic objects collided could be heard as the 7 Absolute Palace Master retreated a few steps back. The black sword was also shaken off its route but had only skewed slightly before returning to its original position and continued to shoot forward. This sword formation is so powerful. The 7 Absolute Palace Master tightened his grip around his spear before greeting the sword formation attack. The black divine sword attacked again and again, but 7 Absolute Palace Master was able to parry it off. However, the 7 Absolute Palace Master was a little gloomy after the repeated attack. I have fought again and again with this sword formation that even my divine body has been affected. My divine body will sustain further damage if this carries on, but this Su Han is only remotely controlling the sword formation to attack me with his action, merely consuming some of his divine power. He'll suffer if this continues. I can't go on like this. Let's just use that trump card. The 7 Absolute Palace Master's eyes were cold as a gush of divine power surged from within him. Buzz. A weird figure that condensed from destruction law appeared in the void out of thin air. It was a destructive clone formed by the 7 Absolute Palace Master based on his own comprehension of the destruction law that could only last for a brief moment. The destruction clone stood in the black divine sword's path. The 7 Absolute Palace Master rushed toward Jian Wushuang. On his way, a monstrous destructive force had begun to condense in his spear. Destructive Dragon Lord's Spear. Boom. The spear that carried endless destructive power exploded all of a sudden. Chapter 2690, Enchanted. Boom. 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 3 continuous violent bombings reverberated in the void as 3 dragons howling could be heard accompanying the bombing. The 7 Absolute Palace Master had only made one movement, but 3 sword shadows could be seen appearing. Those 3 sword shadows directly turned into 3 destruction dragons and roared ferociously as they attacked. The destruction power those 3 dragons showed had caused even Jian Wushuang's facial expression to change. Jian Wushuang waved his sword without hesitation, unleashing his divine power and his maximum capacity of 2 spacetime blades. Boom. A loud bang. The strong killing power directly killed 2 destruction dragons while the remaining one was unaffected and directly knocked into Jian Wushuang's divine body. Jian Wushuang was sent flying outward until he knocked onto the golden prison's edge and landed on its wall. Have I done it? The 7 Absolute Palace Master stared at Jian Wushuang with a slight satisfaction in his eyes. He could feel that his attack had directly landed on Jian Wushuang's body. This attack was extremely powerful and also his strongest. A true peak heaven ultimate god would have been badly wounded after suffering such an impact head-on under normal circumstances. Those with slightly weaker physical protection abilities might even be destroyed by that attack. As for Suhan, Clank Jian Wushuang had already broken loose from the golden prison's wall and reappeared in front of the 7 Absolute Palace Master. You're really a peak heaven ultimate god with some real powers. Jian Wushuang glanced at the 7 Absolute Palace Master with a devilish smile on his face. You aren't hurt? Nothing happened to you? The Palace Master looked at Jian Wushuang and was horrified. He had no idea that only a handful could manage to hurt Jian Wushuang, with even fewer capable of killing him, as Jian Wushuang was a perfect chaotic creature. He would be able to recover in an instant no matter how badly he was injured as long as he had sufficient divine power. For example, the previous attack had really wounded him, but he had recovered in an instant with his combat power still at his peak level. That attack just now should be your strongest attack? Jian Wushuang stared at the Palace Master with a smile on his face. You've shown your strongest attack and it's my turn now. His aura had started to grow horrifyingly as Jian Wushuang spoke. The 7-star secret technique had been activated. His realm had directly risen from peak Earth Ultimate God to primary level Heaven Ultimate God following the vast star power's activation. His divine power then expanded from high-level Heaven Ultimate God to peak Heaven Ultimate God under the disguise of the Black Stone. His true strength had skyrocketed in an instant. He then slowly rose his head and glanced at the 7 Absolute Palace Master with a weird smile on his face. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang made a move. He appeared in front of the 7 Absolute Palace Master as though he had teleported. He then made a wave with his Blood Mountain sword. This wave was poignant and heartbreakingly beautiful. It also carried a hint of confusion which made people intoxicated. Many experts in the surrounding void were involuntarily attracted by this sword light when that attack was carried out and could not control themselves from being intoxicated by it once attracted. It felt as though they were drunk after having several drinks. Although it was a slightly uncomfortable feeling, it was enjoyable. A hint of confusion also flashed through 7 Absolute Palace Master's eyes and brought him to the brink of intoxication. However, he still maintained a sense of understanding towards himself as he tried his best to swing the spear in his hand and block that heartbreakingly intoxicating sword attack. He tried his best to block the attack. However, he was terrified when he discovered his speed was much slower than his opponent who was waving the sword. His speed was too slow and his speed difference with the sword attack was too far apart. He could not block it in time. In the end, swoosh. As their figures met, the heartbreakingly beautiful sword light had already swooshed through his body. Although the 7 Absolute Palace Master was also wearing heavenly treasure level defensive armor, it was not an extremely strong one and was unable to save his life. Cracks had appeared on the armor as the sword light had broken his divine body into 2 from the middle. The 7 Absolute Palace Master's eyes turned lifeless as he failed to hold on to his life. Jian Wushuang stood by the void next to the 7 Absolute Palace Master as he looked down upon his body. I've been understanding the laws and studying my sword principle intensively during the 40-year journey from the northern Darkstar territory to the Danyang continent. I've been trying to innovate new techniques, and because I have the Transmigration Sword formation for Transmigration Law, I have paused on Transmigration Sword techniques and focus all my energy on creating Spacetime Sword techniques. After 40 years, I've finally created the Spacetime Sword technique's 7th form, Enchanted. This form is much stronger than the other 6 forms of my Spacetime Sword technique that I've previously created, mumbled Jian Wushuang. The 7th form, Enchanted, caused everybody to long for the enchantment. That form was something he created out of his peak understanding of spacetime law, a form that was sufficient to cause a huge effect on spacetime. That was the reason this form acted so quickly when he used it. It was so fast that even though 7 Absolute Palace Master was able to respond, he was unable to block it and was directly killed. It would have been easy to kill this 7 Absolute Palace Master I really wanted. Jian Wushuang secretly smiled. In truth, if he used his many methods. Other matters aside, just the A-finger-pointing heavenly technique had allowed him to easily sweep 99% of the peak heaven ultimate gods. Jian Wushuang was not willing to use it again as the A-finger-pointing heavenly technique was too overbearing and nature-defying. A technique he would instead treat as one of his last resort techniques. He could not repeatedly use that last resort technique in front of the crowds, or it would no longer be his last trump card. Just like one of his most powerful last resorts, stately painting, he would not easily use it unless necessary. No matter what, the 7 Absolute Palace Master was already dead. In the voids around them, the 7 Absolute Palace experts who were fighting with the Divine Sword Army naturally saw that scene. The Palace Master is dead? Impossible. If the Palace Master is dead, then aren't we? The experts from the 7 Absolute Palace were horrified and frightened. In contrast to that, the Divine Sword Army had risen morale. Their Palace Master has been killed by us. Kill all of them. Chapter 2691. As easy as breaking a dead branch off a tree, the Divine Sword Army consisted of 50 Heaven Ultimate Gods, with each being the cream of the crop among Heaven Ultimate Gods. They were an army fighting against the 7 Absolute Palace experts in teams of 5 in an absolute advantage, with the battle situation could be said to be leaning to one side. The 7 Absolute Palace experts had lost their backbone and their will to fight following the 7 Absolute Palace Master's death, which immediately caused the situation to lean towards one side. Their failure was imminent and became as easy as breaking dry branches off a tree. The 7 Absolute Palace experts had completely lost their capabilities in resisting and could only be slaughtered by the Divine Sword Army. Whoever surrenders can avoid death, and those who continue to resist will be killed without any hesitation. Jian Wushuang's cold voice could be heard reverberating in the entire Golden Prison. The 7 Absolute Palace experts were extremely happy when they heard his voice. A huge number of the experts gave up resisting and directly surrendered in front of Jian Wushuang in the next moment. Most of the experts would choose to surrender without hesitation if their lives were at stake. However, there were still a small number of stubborn experts who were naturally slaughtered by the Divine Sword Army. The Divine Sword Army moved swiftly as the 7 Absolute Palace experts, apart from those who surrendered, were killed. In this battle, Jian Wushuang had seen the Divine Sword Army's combat prowess. The combat prowess unleashed by a team of 5 under the magic formation support was astonishing. Putting the divine power depletion aside, the fact that the attack damage they received was shared among those 5 people had caused none of the Divine Sword Army's members to fall in the battle, despite many 7 Absolute Palace experts having died. This is indeed a legion. Jian Wushuang secretly gasped in admiration. The combat strength between an expert legion set up with money and a team formed with the union of normal cultivators were different. The 50-man Divine Sword Army alone was just a preliminary formation, and many things were imperfect. The magic formation they used was slightly normal, but their combat power was still extremely strong. This caused Jian Wushuang to uncontrollably think about the first-ranked legion on the Danyang continent, the Crimson Stone Official Army. The Crimson Stone Official Army had a total of 1,000 Heaven Ultimate Gods during its peak, with each of those Heaven Ultimate Gods being elites. They had a great many brave warriors, while their military and magic formations are perfect. This was an extremely invincible legion under the personal leadership of the Crimson Stone Saint and his many other Heaven Ultimate Gods. The Divine Sword Army was still very much weaker when compared to a legion of that level. Immediately send a message to inform Dong Shui that the 7 Absolute Temple has been conquered by us. Ask her to come over with some people to take over the 7 Absolute City and arrange a place for the 7 Absolute Palace experts to settle down. Make sure to use those who are useful, ordered Jian Wushuang. Yes. Long Shan nodded and immediately sent a message to Dong Shui. After that, Jian Wushuang and the Divine Sword Army only waited a day in the 7 Absolute City before Dong Shui rushed over with many Sword Alliance experts. The Sword Alliance was originally the integration of 2 third-rated forces. However, there were many experts in the Sword Alliance at that moment due to the many resources which Jian Wushuang provided within that year, on top of the fact they recruited many others. The Divine Sword Army alone had 50 Heaven Ultimate Gods, with another 50 Heaven Ultimate Gods in the Alliance. At this moment, Dong Shui had brought a group of the Heaven Ultimate Gods to meet up with Jian Wushuang. Alliance Master, this place is... Dong Shui looked at the surroundings in surprise. She had already guessed what happened here, but she was still extremely surprised by it. Jian Wushuang had hurried over with the Divine Sword Army and wiped out the 7 Absolute Palace without any preparations or discussions beforehand. I'll leave the remaining steps for you to resolve, as I have other matters needing my attention, ordered Jian Wushuang before glancing over at Long Shan. Long Shan, gather the Divine Sword Army. We're leaving now. We're leaving now? Long Shan was caught by surprise. Alliance Master, where are we going this time? Bloodwater City, said Jian Wushuang. The Bloodwater Gang's turf, Bloodwater City? Alliance Master, do you plan to continue by making a move toward the Bloodwater Gang? Long Shan and Dong Shui widened their eyes. Was his appetite not too huge for immediately making a move towards the Bloodwater Gang after winning over the 7 Absolute Temple? I'm personally leading the Divine Sword Army this time. It's also the Divine Sword Army's first battle. How can we only take down one force, the 7 Absolute Temple? The Bloodwater City isn't too far from the 7 Absolute City. We can arrive there in half a day with our speed and the Bloodwater Gang won't be able to react under such circumstances. Follow me. Jian Wushuang ordered without further explanation. Many of the soldiers in the Divine Sword Army saw with their own eyes Jian Wushuang swiftly killing the 7 Absolute Temple Master. His strength naturally increased their obedience toward him and there were no hesitations when they heard Jian Wushuang's orders. The Divine Sword Army immediately took action and headed for the Bloodwater City. The Bloodwater Gang located in the Bloodwater City was also one of the third-rated forces near the Sword Alliance. However, it was much weaker compared to the 7 Absolute Temple. Although the Divine Sword Army had just experienced an intense battle against the 7 Absolute Temple, it did not suffer any huge losses and still contained its high combat prowess. There was no need to mention Jian Wushuang, who was definitely in good shape. The same situation soon happened. The place was also forcefully wiped out and fell apart like broken twigs, just like the 7 Absolute Temple. A normal third-rated force with only a single peak heaven ultimate god was unable to stop Jian Wushuang and his Divine Sword Army. The Bloodwater Gang Master was killed by Jian Wushuang whilst his direct followers also died in the Divine Sword Army's hands within 15 minutes. The remaining Bloodwater Gang experts thereafter surrendered. As a result, Jian Wushuang had also obtained the Bloodwater Gang. Dong Shui thought she was dreaming when she rushed to the Bloodwater Gang with her subordinates and saw the situation there. It had to be known that the previous Dragon Divine Gang had constantly suffered from conflicts against the other third-rated forces near them. However, those few forces were too close with each other such that it was difficult to create a huge crisis for the other parties. The reason Dragon Divine Gang got into their previous situation was because of the Dragon Divine Gang Master's carelessness. He ended up being killed by the Purple Beast Alliance Master who found the opportunity to do so. However, their new Alliance Master had swiftly taken down 2 third-rated forces within a mere 2 days, less than a year after the Sword Alliance was formed with means beyond what others could do. Alliance Master, shall we continue to the next force? Long Shan asked as he stood beside Jian Wushuang. He had previously felt that Jian Wushuang was slightly crazy, but those continuous battles had given him huge confidence. He was looking forward to Jian Wushuang leading the Divine Sword Army and attacking the remaining third-rated forces. He was not the only one, as most of the Divine Sword Army soldiers felt the same. Jian Wushuang had earlier announced that they could take over their dead enemies' interspatial rings in such battles, hence it was natural for them wanting to continue conquering others. One of the reasons being they were enjoying the killing spree, while the other was that all of them had somewhat benefited after experiencing both battles, with some gaining huge amounts of spoils. Chapter 2692, Support of a Powerful Clan, Continue to the Next Force? Jian Wushuang slowly shook his head. This will be the end of this trip. Our Sword Alliance has huge gains as we've gained control of the lands that originally belonged to the 7 Absolute Temple and Bloodwater Gang after continuously wiping them out. If we continue our path, brothers of the Divine Sword Army might be able to take it, but the remaining third-rated forces aren't dumb. I'm sure they have already gotten news about what our Sword Alliance is doing and will be prepared. There's a possibility that the remaining 3 forces have already gathered together. We might not be able to gain an upper hand if we continue our journey of conquering others. Let's focus on integrating the lands we've just gained and talk about this later. All right. Long Shan nodded. The Divine Sword Army soldiers were slightly disappointed when they knew the journey of conquering others was not continuing, but they quickly settled down. They knew that they were the Sword Alliance's sharpest sword, and they were not in a hurry, as there would surely be a lot more conquering battles like what they had experienced that day. As the Sword Alliance was busy integrating the territories that once belonged to the 7 Absolute Temple and Bloodwater Gang, the rulers of the remaining 3 third-rated forces had already gathered together just as Jian Wushuang expected. They were in a huge mansion where the Corpse Palace was located. In the huge hall, a bald man who was like a bag of bones was sitting on the throne. There was a wine glass on the table in front of him that was filled with crimson-colored blood. It was the blood of a virgin. The bald old man's face was filled with anticipation and desire as he looked at the virgin's blood in the glass. He picked up the glass and slightly wet the corner of his lips before gulping everything down. He had a prolonged, intoxicated and content expression on his face after drinking the blood. Palace Master Guillemot is still extremely laid back when we're already in an imminent crisis. A slightly unfriendly voice could be heard. The person speaking was a middle-aged man in long robes seated in front of a table at the end of the hall. The middle-aged man in long robes was emitting a powerful peak heaven ultimate god aura. There was a lady in green clothing sitting opposite of him who had her eyes closed but a serious expression on her face nonetheless. The bald old man had finally put down the wine glass in his hands and glanced over at the duo sitting underneath before smiling and asked, "An imminent crisis? Everything is going well, so where is this imminent crisis coming from?" Palace Master Guillemot. Do you really not know, or are you faking it? The Sword Alliance has already taken action. They managed to conquer both the 7 Absolute Temple and Bloodwater Gang in less than 2 days. At this rate, the next force the Sword Alliance will be aiming for could be my Divine Dragon Pavilion or the Purple Dress House. They might even directly take action towards your corpse palace. The Sword Alliance is coming at such a menacing rate. We might follow in the footsteps of 7 Absolute Temple and Bloodwater Gang if we don't prepare ourselves, shouted the middle-aged man in long robes who was also the Divine Dragon Pavilion Master in a deep voice. Brother Xinglong, aren't you worrying unnecessarily? Putting the fact that the Sword Alliance might not even take action against both of you. Even if they really take action against you, you shouldn't be afraid either, as all of us are third-rated forces after all, said the bald old man slowly, who was also one of the Corpse Palace Masters, Palace Master Guillemot. The Corpse Palace had 2 Palace Masters, Guillemot and Chirimot. Both of them were peak heaven ultimate gods. Between the two of them, Chirimot was much stronger but seldom involved himself in mundane affairs. Guillemot was the one taking care of the Corpse Palace's daily affairs. Palace Master Guillemot, I'm not in the mood for jokes at such important times, said the long-robed middle-aged man coldly. He clearly understood the strength of his Divine Dragon Pavilion. As a third-rated force, the Divine Dragon Pavilion's strength was similar to the 7 Absolute Palace and Bloodwater Gang. If the Sword Alliance was able to wipe out both forces so easily, they could easily wipe out the Divine Dragon Pavilion and Purple Dress House too. It looks like Brother Xinglong is really nervous this time. Guillemot smiled, but the expression on his face gradually changed to a serious one. No matter what, the Sword Alliance has gone overboard this time and has already become a serious threat to us. Everybody will feel insecure if this continues, hence why don't we make an appointment with the Sword Alliance Master and have a good discussion with him to resolve this matter. Make an appointment with him to have a discussion? The long-robed middle-aged man was extremely angry. Guillemot, what are you thinking? The Sword Alliance has already openly taken action and we only plan to make an appointment with the Alliance Master to discuss ways to resolve this matter? What a joke. Is this a joke to you? What great ideas do you have then, Brother Xinglong? Guillemot asked. Simple, the Sword Alliance is a great threat and its ambitions are clear to all of us. We cannot be sitting ducks and need to grab this chance before the Sword Alliance has full control over the 7 Absolute Palace and Bloodwater Gang's territory. The 3 of us should join hands and wipe out this Sword Alliance before they grow too strong, said the long-robed middle-aged man seriously. I agree. The green-clothed lady who had been quiet while sitting there in an upright manner also slightly nodded. Both of them had a prior discussion between themselves before coming over to the Corpse Palace together. Guillemot smiled indifferently. The both of you agreed to directly take action and wipe out the Sword Alliance. However, have you thought about the fact that it isn't so easy to wipe out the Sword Alliance? If I'm right, the Sword Alliance has a strong power secretly supporting them. What? The expressions on both the long-robed middle-aged man and green-clothed lady changed as they immediately turned their heads to look at Guillemot. Guillemot continued, I'm just making assumptions, but there's a huge possibility it's true. The Sword Alliance originated from the merger of Dragon Divine Gang and Purple Beast Alliance. Both forces were third-rated forces without many resources. However, the Sword Alliance has been wantonly raising a large army after Suhan appeared and integrated both forces to form the Sword Alliance. They even offered very attractive terms. Third-rated forces like us offer 1 million primordial stones as payment to a primary-level heaven ultimate god for 100 years of service. On the other hand, the Sword Alliance is so rich that they offer 3 million primordial stones to any primary-level heaven ultimate gods who joins and obeys them for 100 years. Their offer is 3 times that of ours. They attracted many experts to join them because they had such attractive terms. This is why the Sword Alliance's strength increased by so much within 1 year till the point that they could wipe out the 7 Absolute Palace and Bloodwater Gang. The Sword Alliance can afford such high payments because they owned a huge amount of resources and had substantial financial support. However, where did these resources and financial support come from? Only relying on high-level Heaven Ultimate God Suhan is not enough. That's why I'm certain that the Sword Alliance has a huge powerful clan supporting them from behind the scenes. This powerful clan might be an extremely strong second-rated force on the Danyang continent. However, it might also be a really powerful first-rated force. Chapter 2693. A Treacherous Dinner. It doesn't matter if the Sword Alliance has a strong second-rated or first-rated clan supporting them. We cannot easily offend them, said Guillemot. The long-robed middle-aged man and the lady from the purple dress house looked sheepishly at each other as they heard this before nodding to themselves. It was true that the Sword Alliance had lots of resources and it looked like there was a powerful clan secretly supporting them. If a clan secretly supported them, the Sword Alliance was not what several small third-rated clans could offend. That is why we cannot make any rash moves. Let's invite the Sword Alliance master over and have a discussion with him. We need to understand if any powerful clans support the Sword Alliance and inquire about his true purpose. We shall act based on the situation later on, said Guillemot. Act based on the situation? The long-robed middle-aged man and the green-clothed lady dress looked at each other. Both of them naturally understood the meaning behind Guillemot's words. Both of us will make our move first if that's the case. Palace Master Guillemot, please send a message to the Sword Alliance as soon as possible, said the long-robed middle-aged man. Don't worry, Brother Xinglong, I'll immediately send the message to Sword Alliance, but I have no idea if the Sword Alliance master will attend the dinner or not, said Guillemot. The long-robed middle-aged man and the green-clothed lady did not stay any longer. They soon turned and left. However, Guillemot's eyes turned cold after they left, and even had a weird smile on his face. Big brother, have you heard everything? Guillemot started mumbling to himself. However, an old man who looked cold and did not have any breath of life in him slowly appeared as he finished speaking. This old man was the other Corpse Palace master, Shurimo. The Divine Dragon Pavilion and the Purple Dress House came to our Corpse Palace proactively after the 7 Absolute Palace and Bloodwater Gang were continuously wiped out by the Sword Alliance. Ah, even the gods are helping me. Guillemot laughed arbitrarily. Shurimo coldly said, our Corpse Palace was originally worried about not having a way to centralize the leaders of these forces. However, the Sword Alliance has helped us in a big way. We've waited for so long to finally get this chance. Star Fort has been prepared since long ago and I only need to send a message to get them here. As for the Sword Alliance, I'm leaving it to you to send the message. Make sure the Alliance Master comes over no matter what. Don't worry, big brother. Our Corpse Palace has never had any conflict with the Sword Alliance, and I even sent an expensive gift when the Sword Alliance was first founded. I did that to make the Alliance Master have a good impression on me. Now that I'm lowering my attitude to personally invite him, I don't think the Alliance Master will refuse me, said Guillemot with a smile. That's good. Shurimo slightly nodded. The people of the Corpse Palace soon sent a token to the Sword Alliance which was placed in front of Jian Wushuang at that moment. Jian Wushuang looked at the message on the token as he sat on the throne. His facial expressions changed. Both Corpse Palace masters personally invited me to attend a dinner at the Corpse Palace. They're lowering their positions by so much? Dinner? What does the Corpse Palace plan to do? Xiao Tiexin, Dong Shui, Long Shan, and several others stood in front of Jian Wushuang with weird expressions on their faces. Our Sword Alliance has just wiped out the 7 Absolute Palace and Bloodwater Gang. I'm sure the Corpse Palace has something else in mind when they invite you to the dinner at this moment, said Xiao Tiexin. If I assumed correctly, people from Divine Dragon Pavilion and Purple Dress House will be attending that dinner too, said Dong Shui. Perhaps. Jian Wushuang nodded. He could also notice that this dinner might be one with planned treachery hidden behind that was aimed at him. Alliance Master, it matters not if you don't attend the dinner since it's so dangerous, said He Yen. That's right. We don't need to be afraid of the Corpse Palace based on our Sword Alliance's strength right now. We can ignore this dinner. Zishan also agreed. With that said, I don't plan to completely turn against the Corpse Palace now. The Corpse Palace previously gave me an expensive gift and are even lowering their stance right now. It's hard to explain my absence when they've honored me to this extent. Apart from that, I keep having the feeling that this dinner is not going to be so simple, said Jian Wushuang. It's not that simple? Xiao Tiexin and the others wondered. The Corpse Palace acts so weirdly. The Corpse Palace is the strongest among the third-rated forces surrounding us and even has the support of the Star Fort behind them. Why didn't the Corpse Palace contend for hegemony when they have such a huge advantage? They even treat the remaining third-rated forces around them politely and humbly, which is really abnormal. The Corpse Palace even sent gifts to express good intentions when our Sword Alliance was first founded. As the saying goes, one who's unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. I have this constant feeling that the Corpse Palace is planning something. We should be able to see Corpse Palace's true intentions in this dinner, mumbled Jian Wushuang, who was deep in his thoughts as he tapped his fingers on the armchair. He finally made up his mind after some time. "I'm going to this dinner?" Alliance Master, Xiao Tiexin and the others were surprised. Jian Wushuang waved his hand as he smiled. "Don't worry. Although the dinner might be dangerous, it's impossible to make me stay with only the Corpse Palace's strength. Not only the Corpse Palace, but even the Star Fort behind them also aren't capable of doing it." He was confident about his strength and means. Although there were people in this ancient god domain who could kill him, they did not exist in this Danyang continent. Let alone just a third-rated force in the Danyang continent. Xiao Tiexin and the others glanced at each other but stopped persuading him when they heard that. However, Long Shan still said, "Alliance Master, why don't I lead the Divine Sword Army and wait outside the Corpse Palace for safety precautions? If anything happens during the dinner, you only need to send a message and the Divine Sword Army can attack them." "That sounds great." Jian Wushuang nodded. Long Shan immediately commanded the Divine Sword Army to make preparations after a decision was made. 3 days later, Jian Wushuang left for the Corpse Palace. The Corpse Palace was extremely strong among the third-rated forces and had control over a large territory, 3 townships. Corpse City was where the old den of the Corpse Palace was located at. The Divine Sword Army was left outside of the Corpse City as Jian Wushuang entered the city alone. Gu Mo, who had been waiting there for him, immediately walked forward to welcome Jian Wushuang once he entered the city. "Ah, I've long heard about Alliance Master Su Han's reputation, but we were never fated to meet previously. Finally, I've gotten to meet you in person today." Gu Mo looked extremely welcoming. "I've also admired Palace Master Gu Mo since a long time ago. It's a pleasure to meet you today. I wonder if Palace Master Shirimo is also here?" Jian Wushuang politely asked. "Big Brother is also here, but he's in retreat all year long and will not be able to welcome you. I hope Alliance Master Su Han won't be unhappy because of that," said Gu Mo with a smile. Chapter 2694. Alliance. Jian Wushuang and Gu Mo had hidden agendas of their own. However, they had not truly fallen out, so they greeted each other during their first meeting. "Alliance Master Su Han, please come in." Gu Mo led Jian Wushuang walking towards the insides of the Corpse Palace and soon arrived in a big hall. This was a glorious and splendor hall with tables placed on both sides and almost 100 moving beauties dancing in the middle of the hall. The dancing beauties did not stop after Jian Wushuang and Gu Mo entered the hall. However, a long-robed middle-aged man and a green-clothed lady stood up from behind the tables on both sides. "Alliance Master Su Han," said the long-robed middle-aged man. "Greetings to you, Alliance Master Su Han." The green-clothed lady looked rather humble. "Oh, both Master Xinglong and Purple Dress House Master are also here?" Jian Wushuang glanced at the both of them without any signs of surprise. He knew this would be an extraordinary dinner. Apart from the Corpse Palace, Divine Dragon Gang and the Purple Dress House would come forward. "The two of us will not turn down a personal invitation from Palace Master Gu Mo," said the green-clothed lady, Purple Dress House Master. "Ah. Everybody take your seats." Gu Mo also sat down in front of the table at the highest point as he waved his hand and smiled loudly. Jian Wushuang and 2 others quickly found their respective places and sat down. "It's been such an honor that all 3 of you can gather at my Corpse Palace today. Come, let me call out a toast in your honor," said Gu Mo with a smile as he raised the glass in his hand. Jian Wushuang, Xinglong, and the Purple Dress House Master also raised their glasses to drink together. Gu Mo wiped the edge of his mouth after finishing his glass of wine and started to speak seriously. "Honorable guests, I've invited the 3 of you to this dinner tonight for one reason only." Jian Wushuang, Xinglong, and the Purple Dress House Master immediately turned to look at Gu Mo. "I really want to see what this Gu Mo wants to do?" Jian Wushuang smiled coldly in secret. "Honorable guests, all of you know that the Danyang continent is huge with many forces, powerful organizations and clans on this piece of land. If we put aside the top 5 peak organizations, there are already many first and second-rated forces on the Danyang continent. As for third-rated forces like ours, there are as many as the stars in the sky," said Gu Mo loudly. Jian Wushuang's facial expression did not change. However, Xinglong and the Purple Dress House Master frowned. They previously went looking for Guillemot so that Guillemot would hold that dinner in hopes of resolving issues with the Sword Alliance. They wanted to investigate if there was really a powerful clan supporting the Sword Alliance and the Alliance Master's intentions. However, Guillemot mentioned the situation in the Danyang continent as soon as he opened his mouth. That caused Shenglong and the Purple Dress House Master to feel slightly odd. On the other hand, Guillemot continued, the situation of the Danyang continent is too complex with extremely crazed fights between the forces. Third-rated forces like Corpse Palace, Sword Alliance, Divine Dragon Gang and Purple Dress House are like lonely kayaks when caught in such crazy fights. We're so vulnerable that we'll be wiped out and taken over by others at any minute. I believe all of you have the same thoughts as I have. Guillemot looked over at the trio sitting beneath him with a smile on his face. Jian Wushuang only gave an indifferent smile as a response. However, the facial expression of Shenglong and the Purple Dress House Master had completely changed. They could recognize there was some hidden meaning in Guillemot's words and matters were not going as per what they initially agreed. Palace Master Guillemot, what are you trying to say? Shenglong asked in his deep voice. What I want to say is very simple. All four third-rated forces, Corpse Palace, Sword Alliance, Divine Dragon Gang and Purple Dress House, are located in the same area. We are pitifully weak if we remain alone as none of us will be able to fight if we meet any second-rated forces or a really powerful expert. However, if all four of us unite like strings twisted into a piece of rope, even the strongest second-rated force could not easily take action against us. Won't that be nice as our opportunity of surviving in this Danyang continent would increase? Guillemot said with a smile. Strings twisted into a piece of rope? I wonder how Palace Master Guillemot plans to do this? Shengliang asked. An alliance. The four of us should unite and form a new alliance, replied Guillemot. Alliance? What you mean to say is a merger, right? Shenglong's eyes grew cold. You can say that too. Guillemot nodded gleefully. The faces of Shenglong and the Purple Dress House Master completely darkened after hearing that. They had finally understood that the real purpose of Guillemot's dinner was not to take action towards the Sword Alliance. Uniting them was just an excuse as Guillemot's true aim was to take over these three forces. Focusing their aim at the Sword Alliance and investigating the origins of the Sword Alliance was just an excuse to gather them in the Corpse Palace. After all, Shenglong and the Purple Dress House Master would not join any of Guillemot's dinner at the Corpse Palace under normal circumstances. However, Shenglong and Purple Dress House Master were the ones that proactively sought the Corpse Palace out this time. Palace Master Guillemot were invited here to resolve the matter where the Sword Alliance recently destroyed both the Seven Absolute Palace and Bloodwater Gang. My Purple Dress House is not interested in the alliance that you mentioned, said the Purple Dress House Master directly. Shenglong also seriously said, the same applies to my Divine Dragon Pavilion. There's no need to continue if Palace Master Guillemot held this dinner intending to form an alliance. I'll make my move first. Shenglong stood up and walked towards the exit after he spoke. The Purple Dress House Master also stood up to leave while Jian Wushuang was the only one left sitting there. Guillemot looked on with a smile without any intention of stopping them as the two of them left. A figure suddenly appeared in front of Shenglong and the Purple Dress House Master when they just arrived at the entrance of the hall. My guests, the dinner has just begun. Why are you in a hurry to leave? A cold voice could be heard coming from that person's mouth. It was an elder with a cold and lifeless figure whose voice also sounded as though there was no life in it. Shurimo. The faces of Shenglong and the Purple Dress House Master darkened. Shurimo, Guillemot's elder brother, was an extremely strong peak-level heaven ultimate god. At the very least he was much stronger than both Guillemot and Shenglong. However, Shurimo was not the only one who appeared at that moment. Two other figures were standing behind him. They were a man and woman whose aura had also reached the peak heaven ultimate god realm. Chapter 2695, True Intentions Unveiled. The two of them are experts from Star Fort. The faces of Shenglong and the Purple Dress House Master darkened when they saw the peak heaven ultimate gods behind Shurimo. They had heard Corpse Palace had a certain relationship with Star Fort. It could even be said that Star Fort was secretly supporting the Corpse Palace. However, those were only rumors with nothing concrete. However, the doubt regarding Corpse Palace and Star Fort's relationship had been cleared the moment those two peak heaven ultimate gods appeared before them. Palace Master Shurimo, what's the meaning of this? The Purple House Master stared at Shurimo in front of her. Our Corpse Palace sincerely invites both of you to attend this meeting. However, you want to leave when the dinner has just started. Won't that mean you're not giving the Corpse Palace any face? Therefore it'll be best for the two of you to return to your seats, said Shirimo coldly. Both Shenglong and the Purple House Master were secretly anxious. However, the two of them suppressed their anger at the bottom of their hearts and returned to their seats upon seeing the two experts from Star Fort standing behind Shirimo. At that moment, all of them realized what the Corpse Palace had been planning from the beginning. Based on the situation before them, they could see it was not a day or two since the Corpse Palace had made such plans. Even though the Corpse Palace did not previously show much arrogance and had never proactively attacked the third-rated forces around them, it was because those third-rated forces were too large such that once the Corpse Palace wiped even one of them out, the remaining third-rated forces would immediately unite and deal with the Corpse Palace, which they would then be out of solutions. Therefore, the Corpse Palace could only wait for a chance to gather all the forces' leaders and capture all of them in one move. The Corpse Palace finally managed to invite the various forces' leaders due to the incident with the Sword Alliance. At that moment, leaders of all three forces, the Sword Alliance, Divine Dragon Pavilion and Purple Dress House, had gathered in the Corpse Palace, and the Corpse Palace finally revealed their hidden intentions. They bared their fangs toward the various forces' leaders who were like sitting ducks. The beautiful dancers in the hall had already excused themselves. The ambience in the hall turned extremely quiet. Shenglong and the Purple House Master quietly sat by the tables with ashen expressions on their faces. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang still had an extremely indifferent expression. Alliance Master Su Han. Guemo slowly looked over at Jian Wushuang while being seated at the highest position. What do Alliance Master Su Han think about my suggestion? Guemo stared at Jian Wushuang as Shirimo also looked over at him. They were already too lazy to care about Shenglong and Purple Dress House Master. The Corpse Palace did not place much attention on Shenglong and Purple Dress House Master, as those two representing the Divine Dragon Pavilion and Purple Dress House were like sitting ducks to them. They had to agree even if they did not want to. However, both Palace Masters still had to pay attention to the Sword Alliance Master. The Sword Alliance was formed around 1 year ago but had already taken over 4 cities. Together with the fact that they had many experts in their alliance, they had already surpassed the Corpse Palace, with the only difference of the Sword Alliance not having any real peak heaven ultimate god until that point in time. Although Alliance Master Su Han was only a high-level heaven ultimate god, it was fortunate for them that his combat power was not weaker than peak heaven ultimate gods. I think what Palace Master Guemo said makes sense. A third-rated force is really not eye-catching in the Danyang continent and can disappear just like that. However, if all 4 forces can be integrated and form a singular force, our overall power will skyrocket. We won't be considered weak even amongst second-rated forces. At that time, we will have stronger powers in the Danyang continent with the possibility of getting more profits, said Jian Wushuang slowly. Oh, it looks like Alliance Master Su Han agrees. Guemo looked at Jian Wushuang in surprise. Alliance Master Su Han. Shenglong and the Purple Dress House Master also looked at Jian Wushuang in astonishment. They originally wanted to work together with the Corpse Palace and take action against the Sword Alliance. At that moment, they had planned to unite with the Sword Alliance and fight off Corpse Palace together upon observing the Corpse Palace's ambitions. Who knew that Su Han would agree with the union mentioned by Guemo? It's true that Sword Alliance Su Han has the cardinal principles in his mind. It's no wonder the Sword Alliance can grow to such an extent in such a short time with an alliance master like yourself. Guemo laughed heartily. I'm not done speaking yet. Jian Wushuang waved his hand. I agree with the union and even the integration of all 4 forces. However, I wonder who'll be the leader of this new force? Can't Alliance Master Su Han see who'll be the leader? In this world, the strongest earns the most respect, and our Corpse Alliance is the strongest amongst our 4 forces, said Guemo with a smile. Jian Wushuang slowly stood up with a slight smile at the corners of his mouth as he spoke. Really? I don't think so. In my opinion, your Corpse Palace is also a third-rated force that's unpresentable. You're no different from the 7 Absolute Palace and Bloodwater gang that I previously wiped out. The eyes of Guemo and Shirimo suddenly narrowed when they heard that. Alliance Master Su Han, are you challenging the Corpse Palace's authority? Shirimo coldly asked. Authority? A mere third-rated force dares talk about authority? You're just 2 old dogs together with 2 peak heaven ultimate gods from Star Fort. Do you plan to swallow up my Sword Alliance with such a lineup? You guys are really dreaming here. Jian Wushuang smiled in disdain. The moment he finished speaking, a wave of majestic divine power suddenly surged out of his body like an awakened god. This wave of overwhelming golden divine power concentrated speedily behind him. A humongous golden god shadow formed in the blink of an eye. The extremely tall 50,000 feet golden god shadow was not something the hall could contain. Therefore, the hall's upper part immediately blasted open upon its appearance. Do you want to fight? Shermo's eyes grew cold as the aura of a peak heaven ultimate god burst outward in an instant. Although they were all peak heaven ultimate god, Shermo's divine power was much stronger than the Purple Beast Alliance Master and 7 Absolute Palace Master whom Jian Wushuang killed. Shermo's combat power was much stronger than ordinary peak heaven ultimate gods. Meanwhile, Sheng Long and the Purple Dress House Master's eyes suddenly lit up. The Corpse Palace had invited 2 helpers from the Star Fort, added to a total of 4 peak heaven ultimate gods. The 2 of them dared not fight against Corpse Palace as Shiremo was also incredibly strong. However, everything was different at that moment when Suhan took action. Although Suhan was just a high-level heaven ultimate god, he was someone who previously killed several peak heaven ultimate gods. He might even win in that fight against Shiremo. Chapter 2696. The Star Fort's Fo Wu, you're really Shiremo. This divine power alone is much stronger than any peak heaven ultimate gods. Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently as he could feel the striking strength Shiremo had. However, this degree of power isn't enough. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold. Boom, a huge surge of golden divine power grew and immediately turned into an endless sea of golden divine power. This golden divine power sea swept across and crazily impacted every direction. The huge hall they were at directly shattered under the impact as the golden divine power sea continued to expand. Shiremo humphed coldly when he saw that before he unleashed a huge amount of gray aura following a humming sound. Those gray auras were strands of lifeless auras, stagnant and spiritless. It was the death law Shiremo comprehended and mastered. The gray strands of air engulfed their surroundings and crazily collided with Jian Wushuang's golden divine power sea. In a short time, they were stuck in a complete stalemate as there was nothing they could do to each other. Your understanding of death law is extremely high to be able to block my golden divine power sea and prevent the golden prison's formation. How about this then? Jian Wushuang scoffed before a majestic sword essence exploded with a slight movement of his thoughts. The densely packed sword essence rushed straight into the skies and covered the entire territory in the blink of an eye. Jian Wushuang had opened up his perfect sword world that erupted completely before covering an entire area of 100,000 miles. Shiremo immediately displayed his principal world when he felt the shocking sword essence. His principal world was also of the profound achievement but at first contact. Clatter Shiremo's principal world was mercilessly crushed without any chance of struggling. In the blink of an eye, Shiremo's principal world had crumbled from the suppression. A huge suppression affected Shiremo such that even his facial expression changed. How's that possible? He had no idea Jian Wushuang's sword world would be so strong. Both our principal worlds are of the profound achievement. My principal world had been extended to at least 50,000 miles, but there was no room for it to even struggle. Could his principal world possibly have already extended to 70,000 or even 80,000 miles? Shiremo mumbled. Shiremo suffered a great suppression effect due to the complete collapse of his principal world, causing his overall strength to be weakened. The death law powers coming from him were also weakened. It was originally comparable to Jian Wushuang's golden divine power sea and was in a stalemate. At that moment he was steadily being defeated and looked like it was going to completely disperse, allowing Jian Wushuang's golden prison to resume its formation once again. All of a sudden, boom! Another principal world exploded open. That principal world was much stronger than Shiremo's principal world. It directly rolled open and crazily impacted Jian Wushuang's sword world without being at a disadvantage. Oh? Jian Wushuang's expression changed. The other party's principal world must have reached the complete level for it to fight against his perfect profound achievement sword world. Complete level principal world was the realization of ordinary grand ultimate god. Who's that? Jian Wushuang immediately looked over at the source where the principal world burst forth. A middle-aged man in green robes who gave off an extremely holy aura as though being placed under the sunlight's shower could be seen walking over slowly. The middle-aged man had an extremely charming smile on his face that caused people to be captivated by it. Everybody present could not help but look over at him after his appearance. This person? Jian Wushuang secretly relaxed after taking a look at that green-robed middle-aged man. Jian Wushuang originally thought he was a grand ultimate god since he was capable of creating a complete level principal world. There was a possibility a grand ultimate god from Star Fort was personally there. What happened today would be slightly troublesome if that was the case. However, that green-robed middle-aged man emitted divine powers at the peak heaven ultimate god realm. However, for his understanding of principle to be so high when he's just a peak heaven ultimate god only meant he would be extremely strong. Much stronger compared to Shiramo. I originally thought you can resolve this on your own based on your capabilities. Who knew I still had to personally take action in the end? The green-robed middle-aged man smiled indifferently as he spoke in his gentle yet prestigious voice. I don't want this, but Alliance Master Su Han is really strong, said Shiramo with a bitter smile. The green-robed middle-aged man slowly walked toward Shiramo before turning his gaze towards Jian Wushuang without any emotions in his eyes. Su Han, allow me to introduce the person standing beside me. He's Fo Wu from Star Fort. I wonder if you've heard about him. Shiramo smiled coldly. Jian Wushuang did not react when the name Fo Wu was introduced. However, Sheng Long and the Purple Dress House Master were surprised by it. Star Fort's Fo Wu? Heavenly Buddha Fo Wu? A huge wave of emotions convulsed through their hearts. The name Fo Wu was extremely well known in the entire Danyang continent and both of them had heard about him. Heavenly Buddha Fo Wu was the preeminent figure just second to the Star Fort Master. Although he was only a peak heaven ultimate god, it was rumored he managed to survive one or two moves even when met the ordinary primary level grand ultimate gods. Among the many peak heaven ultimate god experts in the entire Danyang continent, Fo Wu was good enough to be in the top 10. It had to be mentioned that the Danyang continent had a vast territory with many forces having a peak heaven ultimate god overseeing ordinary third-rated forces. There were a huge number of heaven ultimate gods in those forces and Fo Wu's capability to be in the top 10 among peak heaven ultimate gods was not something any normal person could achieve. *T, the Corpse Palace invited Fo Wu over? This Fo Wu is rumored to be capable of wiping out a group of ordinary peak heaven ultimate gods by himself. Even if Su Han is willing to work with the two of us, we'll only be wiped out by Fo Wu. Sheng Long and the Purple Dress House Master were at the brink of desperation. They were still hopeful if only two peak heaven ultimate gods from Star Fort were sent there. There was a possibility of them walking out of the Corpse Palace if Su Han was sufficiently strong. However, they could not see any hope at that moment with Fo Wu personally being there. Fo Wu looked extremely composed even when he was being stared at by the crowd and condescendingly looked at Jian Wushuang. You're Su Han. I've previously heard about you from Shiramo. It's really rare for a high-level heaven ultimate god to have such power. I can ensure a good future for you if you're willing to join our Star Fort. Chapter 2697. The Fight with Fo Wu, a good future? You people are just a second-rated force, what sort of good future will there be? Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently. You're Fo Wu, right? I really want to see how capable you are that enables you to speak to me like that. The Infernal Crimson Divine Swords appeared in front of Jian Wushuang one by one with a total of 9 Infernal Crimson Divine Swords. These 9 Infernal Crimson Divine Swords merged and a huge black Divine Sword came bursting through the Reincarnation Passage before traveling through the void and appeared in front of Fo Wu in the blink of an eye. The black Divine Sword was incredibly strong such that an ordinary peak heaven ultimate god would not dare look down at it when they see it. However, Fo Wu smiled in disdain as a phantom sword figure formed with the wave of his hand and collided head-on with the black Divine Sword. As a result, the black Divine Sword was instantly sent flying outward. The entire sword was trembling crazily as though it was going to break apart. You're really quite strong. Jian Wushuang focused his sight. His reincarnation sword formation was very strong, valiant, and extremely powerful under his full force. However, Fo Wu had yet to unveil his mystical weapon but already could almost break the reincarnation sword formation with the phantom sword formed from his hand wave. There really were not many people who could achieve such strength among peak heaven ultimate gods. Show me whatever tricks you have up your sleeves or you won't have your chance anymore. Fo Wu was still bathed under the sunshine and looked as though he was high above the rest in an extremely detached state. Jian Wushuang's body slightly trembled before activating the 7 Stars secret technique. His divine power was raised to another level upon activating the 7 Stars secret technique. At the same time, a layer of golden armor covered his body amidst surging golden lights that surrounded the entire sky. He had activated all the secret techniques he owned, the 7 Stars secret technique, the 9 Sparkle Star Armor Golden Armor chapter, and the Divine God of Punishment. Jian Wushuang softly yelled, "Let's try again." The black Divine Sword slightly trembled before bursting out once again. The difference being the black Divine Sword was much stronger than how it previously was. The 7 Stars secret technique had improved his strength by an entire realm. The 9 Sparkle Star Armor's Golden Armor chapter had raised his combat power by 3 times. The current Jian Wushuang was completely different from his previous self. Fo Wu waved his hand again when he saw the black divine sword once again headed over. A phantom sword swept over just like what had happened moments ago. However, it was slightly brighter than the previous. Both parties collided once again and resulted in bang. The phantom sword directly dimmed down and exploded while the black divine sword continued traveling towards Fo Wu to carry out its attack. Fo Wu slightly frowned and directly attacked using his palm as a sword replacement. Clank, the enormous phantom sword almost separated the void into 2 halves. Clank. A loud metal collision sound was heard before the black divine sword was sent retreating in a shiver. However, Fo Wu's figure was also sent 2 steps backward. Fo Wu stabilized himself after stepping back 2 steps before looking at his slightly tingling palm with an indifferent smile. This is much more interesting. Fo Wu finally took his mystical weapon out. It was a crimson-red battle saber that looked as though it was burning in flames when they first laid eyes on it. Apart from that, Fo Wu's sacred aura skyrocketed as a huge red sun appeared behind him. That crimson-red sun was like the scorching sun rising in the morning that silently suspended behind Fo Wu. A red light appeared in Fo Wu's eyes as he raised his head. Boom! The frightening saber essence suddenly rose. The crimson-red battle saber suddenly took action. The blade directly fell downward. Just like the morning sun rising from the east, the red light shone and lit up the entire sky. Jian Wushuang had a serious look on his face. His overwhelming divine power surged outward as the black divine sword's strength rose once again before headed directly towards the sword with the speed of a meteor falling from the sky. Bang! The violent bang roared in the vast sky. It was as though 2 stars had crazily knocked into each other. The surrounding hall had already broken apart to the extent it had affected the huge buildings around it. Those buildings were also crushed into powder following the attack's aftermath. Many of Corpse Palace experts rose to the sky in fright and had already escaped to the distant void from the battlefield. They looked at that scene with widened eyes. Both Sheng Long and the Purple Dress House Master also retreated to the void nearby. Unfortunately, the 2 of them could not make any moves as Guemo and the other 2 Peak Heaven Ultimate Gods from Star Fort were standing beside them, giving them no escaping chances. In the middle of the battlefield, Jian Wushuang looked slightly dire. He had just escaped from a blast before a figure under the red sun's cover had come chasing after him. Fo Wu was holding his battle saber in one hand whilst his facial expression turned cold. A murderous hint appeared in his eyes. Prepare to die. Fo Wu yelled softly. The original young sun that had risen from the east turned into a scorching hot one in the blink of an eye and was burning the entire land. The saber light that swung from Fo Wu's hand had also completely spread out while carrying a raging fire. All the surrounding void turned into a sea of fire upon the appearance of the saber light. As for Jian Wushuang, he suffered the scariest attack amidst the fire. Boom! Endless power came surging from all sides and pushed against Jian Wushuang's body. Jian Wushuang was unable to withstand that degree of attack. He could only rely on his physical protective abilities and forcefully withstand the attack with his own body. Finally, the sea of fire slowly dispersed as heaven and earth calmed down. A humongous red sun was still behind Fo Wu as he stared at the void in front of him before a human figure slowly appeared. Fo Wu was doubtful when he first saw that figure before being surprised by it. In the end, all his emotions turned into disbelief. He might not have died, but why isn't he hurt at all? Fo Wu had indeed seen clearly that Jian Wushuang's divine body did not suffer any harm. He had double armors covering his body. The golden armor on the outer level had already crumbled, but his life armor did not suffer any major damages. His aura did not even suffer and weakened in the slight. Impossible. My attack just now had injured him. No matter how strong his physical protective abilities are, he can't be unharmed. Fo Wu stared at Jian Wushuang. He had no idea that Jian Wushuang had the perfect immortal body as a perfect chaotic creature. He would immediately recover from any wounds as long as his divine power was abundant. Jian Wushuang was wounded by the blow just moments ago. However, he recovered in an instant with divine power to the extent it looked as though nothing had happened to him. Fo Wu, I've to admit that you're really strong. Jian Wushuang stood in the void and had a cold look in his eyes as he looked toward Fo Wu. Chapter 2698. Sweep everything with one move. You're undoubtedly the strongest heaven ultimate god I've seen since stepping foot in the Danyang continent. Unfortunately, you're still unqualified to kill me. Not only that, but you also need to leave behind your life here today. Jian Wushuang's loud noise reverberated across the entire void. The experts looking at the battle from the surrounding area were completely amazed. This Su Han, Xinglong and the purple dress house master also stared at Jian Wushuang with a hint of expectation in their eyes. On the other hand, Fo Wu had a cold gaze in his eyes. How can you shamelessly brag? Fo Wu once again carried out his attack with the battle saber at hand after shouting. Although he still had a humongous red sun behind him, the saber skill he just used felt like the setting sun. It had a sense of beauty under the autumn breeze. Jian Wushuang glanced at Fo Wu, and the 9 infernal crimson divine swords around him once again integrated into a huge black divine sword. This black divine sword once again came rushing outward with shocking power. This is useless. Although your sword formation is very strong, it's only a joke to me, yelled Fo Wu coldly. Really? Jian Wushuang only lightly smiled before raising his palm and pointed toward the void Fo Wu was located. Unlimited powers of spacetime law came sweeping over with his finger pointing. Spacetime divine technique, a finger pointing heavenly technique. Fo Wu's figure paused in the middle of the void without any warnings. He remained in his attacking position with his saber with the humongous red sun still behind him. However, his actions had completely paused. The spacetime paused. It was the a finger pointing heavenly technique. If Jian Wushuang performed that skill at his full capacity, nobody under the Grand Ultimate God realm could withstand his current strength, unless that person was an expert with an extremely high understanding of spacetime law. Even Fo Wu could not do it. He was completely caught in the stagnation of spacetime. The spacetime stagnation only lasted for a short moment in less than the time for a person to blink. However, that amount of time was very crucial to experts. It could be seen that the black divine sword Jian Wushuang controlled was like a huge mountain-sized drill directly attacking Fo Wu's divine body without any obstructions. Fo Wu's spacetime had just recovered to normal before he was immediately hit by that horrible attack. Even though his body managed to endure the attack, he immediately vomited a mouthful of blood at that moment as the front section of his divine body had sunken in. His figure was immediately thrown backward like a kite with broken strings. You haven't died from that attack? It looks like your physical protective abilities aren't weak. Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently. Fear was written all over Fo Wu's face as he finally stabilized himself. He could feel the wounds he had suffered were quite serious. However, what truly frightened him was the technique Jian Wushuang unleashed just moments ago. He had no idea what happened as the sword formation was some distance away from him before it suddenly knocked onto his divine body. He could not respond nor had the time to block the attack. He was instantaneously wounded badly, which greatly damaged his true strength. What had happened? What skills did Su Han use? Fo Wu was in shock. The unknown was always the most horrifying. He was horrified because he had no idea what Jian Wushuang did moments ago. After all, that attack had managed to wound him badly and he would die if that happened 1 or 2 more times. However, the black divine sword once again came toward him under Jian Wushuang's control. Escape, I have to escape. I'll die if I don't escape. Those thoughts immediately appeared in Fo Wu's heart and quickly took over his mind. It was his intuition that he achieved after experiencing many extreme battles and near-death escapades before achieving peak heaven ultimate God realm. He also deeply believed in his intuition. Therefore, he did not hesitate at that moment and immediately turned around before running backward at his fastest speed. He opted to escape. The last time he ran away was in a one-on-one battle due to coming across a grand ultimate god. However, he could only escape at that moment despite facing someone who was a realm lower than him. The people around them were stunned by that scene as they were observing the battle. However, Jian Wushuang was unwilling when he saw that Fo Wu wanted to escape. Jian Wushuang could be seen raising his hand once again and pointed to the void where Fo Wu with his finger. A finger-pointing heavenly technique. That technique required an extremely huge amount of divine power to activate it. An ordinary peak heaven ultimate god would not be able to use that technique for a second time after forcefully doing it the first time even if they had quite a huge solid of divine power. However, Jian Wushuang was different as his divine power was as vast as an ocean. The divine power he used was not even 1/10 of his total powers even when using that technique, enabling him to activate that technique several times in a battle. It was his second time activating the technique. At that moment the same scene unfolded once again. Fo Wu was once again paused in the middle of the void. He remained in his escaping posture with no changes to his terrified facial expression. He had completely paused there while the black divine sword that kept following behind him was not affected at all. It once again attacked Fo Wu like a flash of black lightning. At that moment, Fo Wu's divine body could not persist any longer and started falling apart. How's this possible? His spacetime had already returned to normal before Fo Wu died. He saw that he was once again attacked and also noticed he was losing his vitality at a crazed speed. He had a horrifying expression on his face and a heart filled with disbelief. However, his life had been completely cut off in the end. Fo Wu, the famous top 10 peak heaven ultimate gods in the Danyang continent and second only to the Star Fort Master, was killed on the spot. A finger-pointing heavenly technique. This technique is really strong. Jian Wushuang exclaimed uncontrollably when he saw Fo Wu was killed. Regardless of having a heaven ultimate god strength, even if that person could enter the top 10, top 5, or even top 3 positions in the Danyang continent, they would not be able to withstand that attack as long as that person was not good at the spacetime law. He could wipe out 99% of those heaven ultimate gods with just that technique alone. Although Fo Wu was very strong, he was not proficient at the spacetime law and was therefore also included in the 99% range. Fo Wu was killed within 2 moves without any chance of struggling. Jian Wushuang did not have time to use his many skills as a result. Jian Wushuang also exhaled softly after killing Fo Wu before slowly looking over at the Corpse Palace and Star Fort's experts. Fo Wu is dead. The rest of you are next. Chapter 2699. Time for our talk. The surrounding void was silent. The many experts including Shi Mo and Gu Mo from the Corpse Palace, the 2 peak heaven ultimate gods from the Star Fort, Sheng Long and the Purple Dress House Master had widened eyes with disbelief written all over their faces. Dead? Fo Wu died? Fo Wu, the top 10 heaven ultimate gods in the Danyang continent, was killed by Su Han? They were slightly stunned as huge waves of emotions surged through the bottoms of their hearts. At the same time, they had deep doubts about the occurrence. What are those skills Su Han used just now? They could see the scene moments ago. They saw Jian Wushuang pointing from a distance and Fo Wu rendered unable to move. His immobility had allowed Jian Wushuang to directly kill him. Such a scene had occurred twice, with Fo Wu heavily wounded the first and directly killed in the second time. However, they had no idea what skill Jian Wushuang had used. They also had no idea how Jian Wushuang managed to stop an extremely strong peak heaven ultimate god from moving in such a short amount of time. However, they knew that the technique Jian Wushuang used was horrifying. At that moment, Fo Wu is dead. All of you'll be next. Jian Wushuang's cold and emotionless voice could be heard echoing between heaven and earth. Corpse Palace experts' faces including Shi Mo and Gu Mo immediately darkened. How could they block his attack if even Fo Wu could not withstand Jian Wushuang's techniques and was directly killed? Boom! The violent golden divine power sea once again surged as Jian Wushuang's aura seemed as though it had reached the heavens. His eyes looked at the Corpse Palace experts with a strong intent to kill. Attack together. Shi Mo shouted as a huge amount of death law strength crazily burst outward. He wanted to gather the 4 peak heaven ultimate gods' powers and work together with Gu Mo and the 2 Star Fort's peak ultimate heaven gods to fight Jian Wushuang. Gu Mo and the other 2 Star Fort's peak heaven ultimate gods also wanted to work together. However, Jian Wushuang pointed his finger again before the others could approach him. A finger-pointing heavenly technique. It was the same technique, but he used it on Shi Mo at that moment. Fo Wu had died and the strongest person was none other than the Corpse Palace's Shi Mo, hence Jian Wushuang naturally focused on him first. Even Fo Wu could not withstand that a finger-pointing heavenly technique. Although Shi Mo had a high understanding of the death law, his understanding was not on spacetime law. The spacetime he was located immediately froze with him altogether and rendered Shi Mo immobile. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang's body suddenly shook. His figure appeared in front of the frozen Shi Mo as though he had teleported. He then waved his blood mountain sword. The sword was beautiful in a sad way. It was so beautiful that it could break a person's heart. There was even a hint of perplexity which caused people to be intoxicated by it. The surrounding experts in the voids were uncontrollably attracted by that sword light and soon intoxicated by it as it swept away. Although it was slightly uncomfortable, there was an endless aftertaste as though they had gotten drunk after having several drinks. The spacetime sword technique's 7th form, Enchanted. Under the poignant and intoxicating sword technique, the frozen Shi Mo did not have any capabilities to fight back and was instantly beheaded. 2 spacetime blade was activated at the same time before smashing Shi Mo's divine body into powder. Shi Mo immediately died. Big brother? Gu Mo stopped moving after shrieking loudly. He glanced at Jian Wushuang coldly but turned to escape the next moment. He was not the only one, as even the 2-star Fort's Peak Heaven Ultimate Gods had also started escaping with a crazed attitude. They knew clearly that if Shimo was still alive, they might have an opportunity to fight against Jian Wushuang if the 4 of them worked together. However, only 3 were left after Shimo's instantaneous death. There was no room for them to fight back anymore. Therefore they could only escape. They did not have the time to even care for the corpse palace. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold when he saw the 3 of them escape. He then pointed his finger again. Among the 2-star Fort's Peak Heaven Ultimate Gods, one of them was frozen on the spot without any warnings. Jian Wushuang's body slightly moved and easily killed that Peak Heaven Ultimate God. However, Gu Mo and the other Peak Heaven Ultimate God had already escaped beyond the range of Jian Wushuang's secret technique while he was killing the Peak Heaven Ultimate God. Jian Wushuang could no longer chase after them, so he could only let the 2 of them escape. Those 2 had managed to escape, but their location was the Corpse Palace, which meant that Gu Mo had completely given up his territory. As for the Corpse Palace experts, they attack once Jian Wushuang gave the order. Jian Wushuang had not given any orders. However, the Divine Sword Army commander Long Shan could perceive huge changes in the Corpse City and knew there was a crazy battle between experts occurring, hence he directly attacked without waiting for Jian Wushuang's orders. Unfortunately, they still arrived late. They saw many Corpse Palace experts surrendering to Jian Wushuang when they arrived. That scene caused many Divine Sword Army soldiers to be flabbergasted as they wondered what had happened. It looked like their Alliance Master had wiped out the Corpse Palace from their observation. However, their Alliance Master was alone? Long Shan, he'll hand these people in the Corpse Palace to you. In addition, send a message to ask Dong Shui and He Yen for personnel to take over the Corpse Palace's territory, said Jian Wushuang. Yes. Long Shan nodded solemnly. Jian Wushuang turned his line of sight after speaking over toward Xinglong and the purple dress house master at the void beside them. It looks like it's time for our talk. Jian Wushuang smiled mysteriously. Chapter 2700. Subdued. Xinglong and the purple dress house master were very worried. Initially, when they realized the real purpose of the Corpse Palace and knew that they were trapped in the situation, they hoped that Jian Wushuang would show his strength and join them to fight the Corpse Palace. Surprisingly, Jian Wushuang took care of Corpse Palace by himself. Jian Wushuang had beheaded the Corpse Palace master on the spot, as well as Fo Wu, who was invited by the Corpse Palace master. His strength was too terrifying. Both Xinglong and Purple Dress House Master were taken aback. Jian Wushuang's strength was so terrifying that it sent chills when they saw the weird smile on Jian Wushuang's face. Xinglong and the Purple Dress House Master immediately had a bad premonition. They also recalled something. Although the Corpse Palace had great ambitions to swallow all of the forces, at least the Corpse Palace was more sensible and had not taken the initiative to act on any of the forces before. However, the Sword Alliance was obviously more ambitious than Corpse Palace and with more sophisticated methods. The Sword Alliance had taken down 7 Absolute Palace and Bloodwater Gang one after another. It was a bloodbath. The Sword Alliance was going to bag Corpse Palace anytime soon. Would the Sword Alliance Master Su Han be willing to let the 2 of them, Xinglong and Purple Dress House Master, go? Alliance Master Su Han, thank you for your action today in stopping the Corpse Palace from carrying out their treacherous tricks and allowing the Divine Dragon Pavilion to be safe. I'll prepare a generous gift and send it personally to the Sword Alliance to express my deepest gratitude after the incident, said Xinglong. The Purple Dress House is also very thankful. The Purple Dress House will do our best to help if Alliance Master Su Han needs any help in the future, said the Purple Dress House Master. They dared not get on Jian Wushuang's wrong side and took the initiative to lower their pride in hopes that Jian Wushuang would let them go. Jian Wushuang sneered after hearing them out. I must say that the 2 of you are clever. You're going to be disappointed if you think that simply being thankful or a generous gift will settle the past bad blood between us. I'm not interested in listening to your words of gratitude and generous gifts. What I'm keen on are both your territories and experts. Xinglong and the Purple Dress House Master were startled. As I've said before, I've no opinion on Palace Master Gumo's proposal. That's exactly what I wanted to do, to be precise. I also want to bring the third-rated forces together and form a brand new force. The only difference is that the new force must be called the Sword Alliance with me as the absolute leader. Do you both have any opinions? Jian Wushuang smiled. Xinglong and the Purple Dress House Master were extremely furious but dared not refute. Jian Wushuang's purpose was obviously the same as the Corpse Palace, to take over the 2 forces. In addition, Jian Wushuang was obviously stronger than Corpse Palace. The situation seemed to like they had just painstakingly sent away a wolf, but ended up with a new and worse enemy like a ferocious tiger. What? Are the two unwilling? Jian Wushuang stared at the two in front of him with a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. He need not do anything as he believed the two people in front of him should understand their situation laid before them. The two of them had no choice at all. Sheng Long and the purple dress house master indeed were looking helplessly at each other. Sheng Long said after a while, "Alliance Master Su Han, what will happen to us after the Divine Dragon Pavilion and Purple Dress House Master merged into the Sword Alliance? Nothing will change as it's just a simple integration. All the experts from both the pavilion and house will be given a position in the alliance based on their strength. Those with tyrannical strength can also join the Divine Sword official army. I'm sure all of them can be integrated into the Sword Alliance. As for the two of you," Jian Wushuang glanced at Sheng Long and Purple Dress House Master. "You know that the overall strength of the Sword Alliance isn't weak with me having the highest combat power at the Peak Heaven Ultimate God Realm. If both of you join the Sword Alliance, you'll only be under myself and my chief steward who is also my maid. I plan to set up another battle hall in the Sword Alliance such that only those above the high-level Heaven Ultimate Gods could join. Both of you can choose to be part of it and become the leader of the battle hall, or you can join the Divine Sword Official Army and become a member of the Divine Sword Official Army. You will neither suffer nor be wronged in Sword Alliance no matter which you choose, as your cultivation realm is obviously Peak Heaven Ultimate God Realm. Moreover, our Sword Alliance has sufficient resources. You'll get to enjoy more resources from the Sword Alliance every year the stronger you are," said Jian Wushuang. Sheng Long and the Purple Dress House Master were moved after listening to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's offers were not great, but they dared not turn him down. If this is the case, Divine Dragon Pavilion agrees to be part of the Sword Alliance and respect Master Su Han as our leader, said Sheng Long likewise with the Purple Dress House. The Purple Dress House Master nodded in agreement. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Alliance Master Su Han, Divine Dragon Pavilion has agreed to surrender. I'll return and summon all the experts to make the announcement, said Sheng Long. Hold on. Jian Wushuang waved his hand. You only made a verbal agreement. Although the two of you have agreed now, there's no guarantee that you won't regret it when you return to your respective forces. I'll have wasted my efforts if that happened, won't I? Sheng Long and the Purple Dress House Master's expression sank. Alliance Master Su Han, don't you believe us? Sheng Long asked in a low voice. It's not that I don't believe the two of you, but there must be a surety. It's okay if the two of you leave now, but you have to let me leave an impression in your body without struggling. Jian Wushuang smiled. Leave an impression? Sheng Long and Purple Dress House Master were shocked. An impression left in the body was equivalent to one's life being under the other party's control. One must never violate the other party's order from then on. Otherwise, the other party could kill them by manipulating the impression. It was a method to control the other party which was quite similar to soul control. The difference was that soul control would erase the subject's own consciousness and become absolutely loyal to the owner without any doubt. On the other hand, leaving an impression in the body would not have any effect on the subject's consciousness, thoughts, strength, or other areas. It was merely to control the subject by placing a stern reminder in the body, hence the subject dared not disobey the other party's orders. Although the method to leave an impression in the body was not as bad as soul control, it would still make the subject feel extremely anxious. Chapter 2701. Second-Rated Force, Alliance Master Su Han, do you want the two of us to hand over our lives to you? Sheng Long's expression was extremely ugly. That's right. Jian Wushuang nodded and grinned. Do you think that both your lives are still safe in your hands? Sheng Long and the Purple Dress House Master were both stupefied. At that instant they were still standing safely on the spot. However, Jian Wushuang was right in front of them. He could easily kill both of them even if he did not use any of his techniques to freeze spacetime with his strength at that moment. Their life and death were indeed under Jian Wushuang's control. Let me leave an impression in your body so I can release you without worries. I'll soon send someone to both of your territories to take over the sites and experts under your command before integrating both of your forces into Sword Alliance in a short time. The two of you will naturally be members of the highest order in Sword Alliance when that time comes. Jian Wushuang smiled. Although Sheng Long and the Purple Dress House Master were extremely unwilling, they had no choice but to agree to Jian Wushuang's request. The two immediately gave up on struggling and allowed Jian Wushuang to leave an impression in their bodies. Jian Wushuang could easily kill both of them at a fickle of his mind at that moment. Haha, welcome on joining my Sword Alliance. You can now go. Jian Wushuang smiled heartily. Sheng Long sighed lightly with the purple dress house master before turning around and left. Jian Wushuang smiled even wider while he watched the two leave. I've earned so much from today's battle, murmured Jian Wushuang. The Banquet Corps Palace initially held to integrate the several forces ended up benefiting the Sword Alliance in the end. The Corpse Palace was destroyed whilst the Divine Dragon Pavilion and Purple Dress House merged into the Sword Alliance. It was equivalent to the Sword Alliance devouring all three forces in one go. All their territories would then fall under Sword Alliance's control. Sword Alliance has controlled 4 cities after taking in the 7 Absolute Palace and Bloodwater Gang. Now, Sword Alliance will be controlling 9 cities altogether with the 3 new additions, especially when considering the Corpse Palace that controls 3 cities. Our scale is considered strong even among second-rated forces. As for the experts, although Corpse Palace was destroyed, Jian Wushuang had only killed one of the 2 highest-level palace masters of the Corpse Palace while the other was chased away. Most of Corpse Palace's experts did not suffer any damage and joined the Sword Alliance for the benefits offered. As long as they could get their desired benefits from the Sword Alliance in the future, they would stay and contribute to the Sword Alliance's combat power. Jian Wushuang would very soon integrate both Divine Dragon Pavilion and Purple Dress House into Sword Alliance. Once the integration was completed, the Sword Alliance would have many Heaven Ultimate Gods, many of which would be joining the Divine Sword Official Army to increase the scale and combat power of the Divine Sword Official Army. The Sword Alliance would then be no weaker than any second-rated force in terms of Heaven Ultimate Gods' combat powers. As for the ultimate level of combatant powers, ordinary second-rated forces had several peak Heaven Ultimate Gods. The Sword Alliance had Jian Wushuang himself, Sheng Long, and the Purple Dress House Master. Among the 3 of them, Jian Wushuang was capable of handling a few peak Heaven Ultimate Gods at one go. Therefore, the Sword Alliance was not weaker at the highest level of combat power and might even be stronger than the average second-rated forces. In other words, the current Sword Alliance was a second-rated force. Regardless of its scale or overall combat power, Sword Alliance would never be weaker than those average second-rated forces. Second-rated forces? Jian Wushuang's mouth curled up slightly. His goal was to expand the Sword Alliance to the point it could challenge the top forces. In that case, the Sword Alliance would be able to relieve some of Crimson Stone Fort's pressure and allow Immortality more time and room to deal with Crimson Stone Fort's internal problems of the several major factions. In addition, Jian Wushuang himself would have controlled a very strong force to help Immortality in solving the internal conflicts between those big factions. He had taken a big step toward his goal. He secretly sighed, but his expression soon became sullen once again. Although I won a great victory in this battle and my Sword Alliance has taken advantage of it, it has also brought a lot of troubles. The trouble was none other than the Star Fort. Although Star Fort was only a second-rated force, it was considered the ultimate expert among second-rate forces. Those forces were not to be trifled with. Although there are many experts within the Star Fort, the Sword Alliance's overall strength isn't any weaker once the Sword Alliance integrates the 3 new forces and includes the Divine Sword Official Army into the equation. In terms of peak Heaven Ultimate God combat powers, I'm now fearless with the A-finger-pointing heavenly technique as 90% of peak Heaven Ultimate Gods are in my match. However, the threat of the Star Fort Master is still too great, thought Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang did not care about the Star Fort's overall strength, including those top experts it possesses. The Sword Alliance would never become the underdog even if the Star Fort was going to fight the Sword Alliance once the 3 new additions joined the Sword Alliance. The only issue that made Jian Wushuang tread carefully was the Star Fort Master. The Star Fort Master was a true Grand Ultimate God. A peak Heaven Ultimate God was far incomparable to a Grand Ultimate God. As an example, FO's strength was extremely powerful and ranked in the top 10 among the many peak Heaven Ultimate Gods in Danyang Continent, but he was still far behind Grand Ultimate Gods. The reason Jian Wushuang was able to kill Fo Wu was based on a technique called a finger-pointing heavenly technique, but the trick only worked up to peak Heaven Ultimate Gods and had no whatsoever effects on a Grand Ultimate God. Jian Wushuang was still unable to face a Grand Ultimate God in a battle. Unless he could go one step further and make a breakthrough from peak Earth Ultimate God to Heaven Ultimate God. Fo Wu was worthy of his high status in the Star Fort, being second only to the Fort Master, with such an extremely extraordinary net worth. There were a total of 2,500 divine elixir pills in the interspatial ring he left behind. Meanwhile, one of the Corpse Palace Masters also had 900 divine elixir pills on hand, which added up to 3,400. There are so many divine elixir pills that it's sufficient to help me make a breakthrough and reach the Heaven Ultimate God realm. However, it'll take a certain amount of time for me to refine so many divine elixir pills. It'll take at least 2 years regardless of how I calculate. I'm afraid the Star Fort Master would have come up here in less than 2 years. Jian Wushuang frowned. If Jian Wushuang broke through and refined the divine elixir pills to reach the Heaven Ultimate God 2 years later, he would no longer need to be mindful of the Star Fort Master. The point was that the Star Fort Master might not give him so much time. Chapter 2702. Look for a helper. Fo Wu whom I've killed had a special position in Star Fort. It'll come the moment I receive news of him, the Star Fort Master, and give the culprit no chance to plan for his escape. Don't mention about 2 years. The Star Fort Master might personally arrive within half a month, said Jian Wushuang secretly. It seemed impossible for him to achieve another breakthrough within half a month to the Heaven Ultimate God realm. There's absolutely no way. I guess I can only ask for help from Palace Keeper Si Zhen. Jian Wushuang then took out a message token. Palace Keeper Si Zhen. Jian Wushuang sent a message to Palace Keeper Si Zhen. Palace Keeper Si Zhen also quickly responded, Jian Yi, are you sending me a message to ask about the sale of the Royal Blood Gem? I've told you that it's not easy to handle the Royal Blood Gem. Besides, the Fort Master has been busy working on this issue, but there's no definite news yet. You might have to wait longer, but you can tell me if you need more primordial stones. Palace Keeper Si Zhen, I'm not here to ask about the Royal Blood Gem. There's something I want to seek for your help. Jian Wushuang smiled. What's the matter? Palace Keeper Si Zhen asked. Well, I urgently need the help of a Grand Ultimate God. I don't need him to fight for me. All I need is for him to stay within the force that I've created. I'll just need to send the enemy away when someone comes and provokes me. They'll probably need his help for 2 years at most, said Jian Wushuang. You need a Grand Ultimate God helper? Palace Keeper Si Zhen pondered momentarily, but he did not ask Jian Wushuang for the specific reason and said, If you're looking for Grand Ultimate God, we have a few here in Crimson Stone Fort who are loyal to the Fort Master. I'm sure it can be arranged as long as the Fort Master orders one of them to offer their help to you for 2 years. However, you probably don't want to use the experts from Crimson Stone Fort, right? Yes, I still don't want people to know the force I've created is closely related to Crimson Stone Fort, hence I prefer a free and independent Grand Ultimate God to help me. Palace Keeper Si Zhen, you have many friends. Can you help me to get in touch with your contacts? Jian Wushuang asked. Well, I do know a few powerful Grand Ultimate Gods who aren't attached to any forces, as there are several within the Danyang continent. I think it's possible to ask them to be your helper for 2 years, but they'll probably ask for a very high amount of rewards in return, said Palace Keeper Si Zhen. I think there's always room for discussion as long as he can help me eliminate an immediate problem and doesn't ask for an outrageous amount in return, said Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang knew there was no free lunch in the world. He would have to pay a reasonable price if he wanted the help of a Grand Ultimate God. He'll help you ask around then, said Palace Keeper Si Zhen. Palace Keeper Si Zhen, could you please help me find one as soon as possible? I need one very urgently, as there may be a strong enemy coming at any time, pleaded Jian Wushuang. Don't worry, it won't take long. Palace Keeper Si Zhen smiled reassuringly. Palace Keeper Si Zhen indeed sent Jian Wushuang another message in less than half an hour. I've contacted a Grand Ultimate God. He doesn't have a name, but most people who know him call him Old Snake or Strange Old Snake. He's a very powerful primary level Grand Ultimate God and had promised to be your helper for 2 years, but he's asking for 1,000 divine elixir pills and 1 billion primordial stones in return. Palace Keeper Si Zhen said. The corner of Jian Wushuang's mouth twitched slightly. He indeed asked for a lot. Jian Wushuang exclaimed. 1,000 divine elixir pills and 1 billion primordial stones were far less than the treasures Jian Wushuang had previously obtained from Shiremo. It was indeed a high price to pay. However, he knew it was not easy to get help from those aloof Grand Ultimate Gods. It was worthwhile to pay 1,000 divine elixir pills and 1 billion primordial stones in exchange for a powerful primary-level Grand Ultimate God to be at his service for 2 years. Old Snake is asking for divine elixir pills only since primordial stones were of little use and were probably just a number to him. He had asked for 4,000 divine elixir pills, but I've persuaded him to go with the current arrangement. He agreed after considering the close-knitted relationship with myself and Crimson Stone Fort, explained Palace Keeper Si Zhen. Really? I should thank you then. Jian Wushuang smiled. You're welcome. I've already told him everything and he's ready to make a move at any time. You may send me your location and I'll ask him to immediately go look for you, added Palace Keeper Si Zhen. In that case, please ask him to come as soon as possible, said Jian Wushuang as he shared his location with Palace Keeper Si Zhen. Palace Keeper Si Zhen then helped Jian Wushuang to sort it out quickly. All Jian Wushuang had to do was wait quietly in Dragon City. During his waiting period, experts from Sword Alliance were busy integrating the three forces: Corpse Mansion, Divine Dragon Pavilion, and Purple Dress House. 5 days had passed in the blink of an eye. They were still busy with integrating those forces, but Old Snake had arrived. In a void not far from the Dragon City, a dark old man dressed in a black robe who had a triangular head pattern skinned green snake on his shoulder stood quietly. The old man had concealed his divine power breath while giving people a feeling of tranquility and calmness. However, his gaze was extremely cold, like the pupils of the viper on his shoulder. Jenny. A pleasure to meet you, Old Snake. Jian Wushuang appeared in front of the old man and humbly paid obeisance while trying to study the other party. Are you the young guy named Jian Yi mentioned by Palace Keeper Si Zhen? The old man nonchalantly glanced at Jian Wushuang and immediately stretched out his hand. Give me my reward first. Jian Wushuang was startled. He would only pay a part for the deposit under normal circumstances, with the rest to be given after 2 years. However, Old Snake had demanded to be paid at the very beginning. Jian Wushuang felt that Old Snake would care about his identity as a grand ultimate god and would not eat his words. Moreover, he was Palace Keeper Si Zhen's friend. There should not be any problems with his credibility, so Jian Wushuang gave Old Snake the 1,000 divine elixir pills and 1 billion primordial stones. Jian Wushuang did not care too much about the 1 billion primordial stones, but 1,000 divine elixir pills were quite useful to him. However, he was not very far away from Heaven Ultimate God Realm. He had managed to obtain 3,400 divine elixir pills at one go earlier, but probably only needed 2,000 of them for his breakthrough. Hence it was still fairly easy for him to give away 1,000 divine elixir pills. Old Snake took the interspatial ring and made a rough calculation before nodding in approval. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.